Hey everybody, it's Romania Black, and we're on Thrice Upon a Time. We're on the last film. I poured myself a possibly actually adult beverage for this because I was like, I'm gonna need it, and I'm ready to watch this final film. We still have the manga to go through, and honestly, I remember when I started the rebuilds, there were some commenters that was like, oh, you should have read the manga first and then did the rebuilds because they're last. But honestly, I personally think that I'm more of a fan of the original series, having watched 3 of the 4 rebuilds at this point. And so I think I'm going to like going back to our roots and exploring the manga before we wrap up everything with Neon Genesis. So that's going to be pretty exciting. Now, when I say that, I still have really liked the rebuilds. As much of a kerfuffle as I have been through the discussions, and as torn as I've been on some directorial decisions, things like that, I still have really enjoyed the rebuilds, and I honestly think they will be 3 films so far that I'll probably go back and watch the dubs for. But I think me personally, and you've probably noticed this from the channel, I'm more of an episodic person. I like TV series more than movies. Even though I love the cinematography of movies, I love the score of movies, I love the acting and the genre itself and the medium, there's something about an episodic television series where you can take a story and flesh it out over a long period of time and you get invested with those characters and that story that I really, really appreciate, more so than like a movie where you have 2 hours to get invested and then that's the story, unless it's like a multi-movie thing. So I have liked the rebuilds a lot. There have been aspects of the rebuilds that I've actually loved and I was like, this is amazing. And then of course there's been parts from the discussion where I've had contention with, but I think that's with any film, honestly. But I do have a lot of comments to go through from the 2nd and 3rd rebuilds. And then getting started with this one. This is a 2.5-hour film. It's the longest one. I'm like, oh, buddy. So I've like mapped out the rest of the day to do discussions. And I'm like, I don't know how long this will take, but I've mapped out the rest of the day to do it. So that's my weekend. But yeah, I am excited to get into the manga after this. We'll have at least 4 installments of the manga in chunks. I'm really excited about that. And then obviously we'll do like a big recap thing at the end for Neon Genesis, which will be a lot of fun. So yeah, I'm pretty excited. I can't believe that this is the final film. I felt like I've stayed relatively spoiler free, so I'm excited. There's been a lot of people that have been like, I'm gonna bite my tongue, and I'm like, okay. So let's get through these comments. I do want to say that there were a couple spoilery things. Someone did say in the comments, they're like, well, Mari's in the manga. And I was like, dang it, no. So I know Mari's in the manga now, which is kind of like, I really hoped the manga was staying like completely old school in the old school series. But okay, she's there. I don't want to know anymore. Whatevs. And then apparently, I like Ogami talked about how the 2 vocal songs in 2.22 are famous Japanese folk songs from the 60s and 70s. Okay, and they're sung by Rei's VA, Megumi Hayashibara. And I was like, oh, that's cool. I like that Rei's voice actress gets to sing those songs. That's nice. YT notes that Anno used a lot of personal references in the rebuilds, and that like the original theatrical release of End of Evangelion, when it came out the same week as Princess Mononoke. And I was like, wow, that puts a timestamp on it, because to think that End of Evangelion came out the same time as Princess Mononoke, I'm like, holy cow. And so the tagline with End of Evangelion was, so I wish everyone would just die. That's a way to get them to the theaters with that tagline for that movie. But I like that the tagline for End of Evangelion was, so I wish everyone would just die. And then Mononoke's tagline was, live. And it's funny because Anno and Hayao Miyazaki were friends and colleagues, and it's like, yeah, Miyazaki's like messages and themes in his movies are so drastically different than Anno's, but they're so good. They're both good. It's like apples and oranges. So I really like that. That was a fun little piece of information, YT. Viper Leone Navarre has a couple comments on here, but one is from 2.22. Kaoru calling Gendo father was just because he was going to become Shinji's father-in-law. Totally makes sense. I was like, yeah, that's great. I love that. And I'll get to your other comment here down below. Stern fatherly disapproval, which is an apt handle to be commenting on Neon Genesis videos, says that maybe it is better to watch these with the context of the original series. And I was like, that's kind of true. Like, if you have the context of the original series, you can kind of fill in the gaps with the movies. And even if there's parts that are kind of befuddling or frustrating, knowing the original series, I think is helpful. I think if I was a new viewer coming into this, because I've watched a couple anime movies that like are standalones, and they try to wrap up and do this complex plot in 2 hours. And oftentimes it just doesn't work. It's too contrived or it feels too rushed. And you just feel like, man, I wish they'd had a TV series to flesh this out. And with Neon Genesis and the rebuilds, they have a TV series that fleshes it out. So I feel like if you are a new member watching the rebuilds for the first time, you're like, man, this may seem kind of rushed. And then when you go back and see the original series, you're like, oh, this gives much more context. So for me, it's hard to view the rebuilds as a standalone thing, because I think it can be, like Stern Fatherly Disapproval says, to its benefit to have come from something that already exists. I like that. Okay. Japanese Fun, which is great, said that the director of 3.33 actually tried to commit suicide because of some death threats they'd gotten from the movie, which is awful. Like, I liked the third rebuild movie. It's maybe my favorite of the rebuild so far. As frustrating as it was for me, I liked it a lot. And so I'm kind of torn between it and the second one, which one I like more. They're apples and oranges to me as well. But even if I hated it, I would never go to resort to giving a death threat to somebody over a piece of media, like a piece of fiction. I'm like, it's not worth it, right? So I'm really sad that the director actually contemplated suicide, but they ended up not, and they went on to direct Twice Upon a Time, or Thrice Upon a Time. So I'm like, good for them. I'm glad that they chose to live and not let something like that make them do something awful like committing suicide. So that's really sad. But yeah, I was like, there's no reason. Why can't we have nice things? But Dean also comments saying that Fu-chan, saying that Shinji will lose in 31 moves when they're playing the Go game in 2.22. He actually, or I guess it was in 3.33, he actually loses 31 minutes later. So I was like, oh, I wondered in the whole shogi thing with 31 moves, I was like, is that just how shogi works? Because I don't know that game or in the rules of it, but it was a nice little tie-in that, okay, well, 31 minutes later, Shinji's going to break down. It's like, it's a nice little foreshadowing. I liked that. Largo01 talked about how in the redub of 3.33 that I guess in the first dubbing, the original dubbing of the movie, the English dub kind of hammed up all the Kaoru and Shinji moments, which is kind of fun because yeah, there's that homoeroticism that's there between Kaoru and Shinji in the original series. It's there in the rebuilds. It's really obvious. It's clearly Anno made it very intentional. And I guess the English dub actors kind of hammed it up, which is fine. I guess that's why I kind of like watching both to see the original context and then the dub translation. But I guess they screened it at an anime convention and one of the Kara executives was there and thought the audience was laughing at the dub. And so he went back and made them actually redub the entire series of rebuilds. And I was like, that sucks. Because it wasn't like, I don't think people were laughing at it. I think they were laughing with it. Like, yeah, Kaoru and Shinji, let's go. I don't think they were making fun of it. And so it's sad that he might have misinterpreted that. So, because I'd heard that there had been two dubs. Like there was a dub and then they redubbed. And some of the actors didn't come back for the redub, which can be frustrating if you're somebody that wanted to see it redubbed with the same voice actors. So interesting. And then Hone Megane is, I guess, technically the name of Mari. And it was a name that's a pun for horn-rimmed glasses, which is the glasses she wears. I'm like, oh, that makes sense. And so that could kind of tie to why Asuka calls her that nickname. Okay. And then apparently there was a different preview for 3.33 than there was for 3.333. So I'm going to make a note to myself that the 3.33 preview, I'm going to make a note to go back and at the end of our discussion to watch it to see how it's different. I'm going to go back and make a note to watch it and see how different it is. Because I was like, okay. And then I did get this comment that is kind of a spoiler and I was kind of like, I didn't want to know about it until after this movie was over. But again, I read the comment and it was like, well, it's done now. But apparently the preview that was at the end of 2.22, the one that I was like, where is this in 3.33? Apparently it was actually meant to be in the third film. They were originally going to have the third rebuild focus on the 14 years in between what happens in the third rebuild and what happens in the second one. But I guess the idea got scrapped and they decided not to do it. So the images in the second preview were just scrapped and they decided to just do something totally different, which it makes sense. I get that now, but it's kind of sad because I'm like, damn it, I wanted to see that. I wanted to see Kaji and Fuyu-chan and Gendo climbing a mountain with a goat. Why can't I get that? And then Rei with all her baby Reis. But I guess they're making a short movie that they're planning on releasing called Evangelion 3.0 minus 46 hours. okay, Kingdom Hearts, why? And that's going to show some of those scenes and what happened in the 14 years prior. So, okay, fine. That explains my answer. I would have liked to have had it at the end. I wish that comment had been saved for this film so that I could have seen it afterwards and talked about it in the manga or in the recap, but it's fine. But yeah, so there was that. That kind of explains it. I still want to go back and watch the 3.33 preview and see how it's different. See when I say that. Christopher Peterson talks about, why did Asuka call the humans Lilin? I know, right? Why did they do that? And Alexander Q kind of commented, like, maybe Asuka wants to separate herself. The curse of the Eva has made her, like, separate herself from humanity. I still don't like the curse of the Eva thing. I think it's, like, such a stereotypical plot contrivance. I'm like, ugh. We'll talk about that in just a second. But I was just like, it just kind of like, maybe that's why. I don't know. I'm not going to read too far into it because it seems like it might lead to spoiler territory. So I'm just going to keep it on the down low. But then, yeah, she had like a blue glow behind her eye. I think I noted that in the last film. And then, she did that. And then she still has, like, could she still have some infection from the angel in her? I guess we'll find out, right? Guess we'll find out. But then Viper Leone Navarre talked about how collaring Shinji is kind of interesting because then he can't become a legend, right? Go become a legend, young boy. You can't do that if you're collared and you can't get in the Eva and awaken it, right? So that is kind of interesting. And Viper Leone was saying that it could be like a statement on the toxic masculinity from the original series, whereas they kept pushing like, be a man, Shinji, do this, Shinji, man up and do this, and kind of how it was pushing these unrealistic expectations on Shinji and forcing this kind of like toxic masculine, ideology upon him. And now in the rebuilds, that can't happen. And so maybe it's a commentary on that. And I liked that the actual treatment causing him to mess up. I like that. The only problem that I have, and the only thing is with that, I think if that's the case and the collaring of Shinji is a commentary on the toxic masculinity and kind of a rebuttal to it, I think it's accidental. I don't think the creators of this series meant that when they did it in the rebuild. And the only reason I say that is because at the very end, Mari's like, be a man, Shinji. And I'm like, well, if the whole point was to make a meta commentary on it, why would you touch back on that same toxic masculinity at the very end of the movie? Why would you do that? So I think if that's a really cool commentary and I liked it, but I think if it is something in the movie, I think it's unintentional. I don't think the directors had that in mind. I think it's maybe accidental because then they backtrack on it at the very end. It's like, why would you backtrack? So I don't know. I really like it though. I like that interpretation. I think it's really cool. I wish that were the case, but Mari's words at the end just still kind of like grate me a little bit. And then, yeah, did the studio realize this? And then Alexander Q brought up the fact that the head that Gendo talks to at the end of the third rebuild is probably Rei's head from the end of the second rebuild when she like became the angel body. So that's creepy and fun. So yeah, I'm really excited for this movie. I feel like it's daunting. I feel like the last film was like an hour and 35 minutes and I talked a long time about it. And then the first one was 2 hours. This one being 2.5 hours and it's being the wrap up. I feel like it's daunting. I feel like there's a lot going to happen in this film. And I'm like, y'all have done an amazing job of not spoiling me of what's to come. And I appreciate that from the bottom of my heart. All y'all have said have been like, the last one. I'm like, ah! So I've poured myself a drink that I will probably reach into a lot in this. And just to see what we're going to get. I didn't dress up as an angel because we're all angels now, right? Humanity is the 18th angel, right? Or maybe that's not the case in this one. But in any case, I'm really excited to see what goes down. I'm also terrified. So there's that. But we'll find out, won't we? So we're going to watch Neon Genesis Evangelion Thrice Upon a Time. And I do like the title of it quite a bit, though. I like it. It gets the number 3 back in there, right? Mm-hmm. And it's also extremely widescreen. It is just like the third rebuild where it is super widescreen. So thank you, Anthony, once again. Thank you for getting me a translated scan of this. You are a saint. Mwah. Chef's kiss. So let's do this. We are going to start this 3.0 plus 1.01. And we're going to start that here in 3, 2, 1. And I'll see you all on the other side. So I really liked this movie. this movie. I actually really liked it. Okay, all right. It takes some of my complaints from the earlier rebuilds, and it gives an explanation for them, which I like. There's still... Okay, so I made these columns, and I went back and rewatched a few parts of it, and then I decided that I was just going to go over it with you all, because otherwise I'd end up rewatching the whole movie, and I was like, no, we're just going to go through it and rewatch it, and it's fine. But I was just like, I really enjoyed this movie a lot more than I thought I was going to. I was going in this being like, I don't know, and it actually, I think, is the most cohesive of the four, and it's the most it feels the most like Neon Genesis Evangelion, except with a hopeful ending instead of the dour ending of End of Evangelion. And I'm sure that will be in contention for some people. I'm sure some people will prefer the more dour, ambiguous ending of End of Evangelion that has the more Twin Peaks feel. This has the more modern, like, kind of not cliche, but it feels like it has the hopeful, happy ending. But I think if it reflects on Anno being in a better place than he was at the end of Evangelion, sure thing. If this is the ending Anno wants, okay, that's fine. I like the blending into reality at the very end. That part was very well done. There's still, I decided to make some categories here. You'll notice it's not the good, the bad, and the ugly this time, which is great, because it really isn't. There's a lot of OG callbacks, especially towards the end, which I really liked. We're going to talk about those. There were themes, like distinct themes in here. I was like, okay, that's what felt so Evangelion about it, because the original series had so many like different symbolic threads and themes with the characters, things like that. And I just feel like the first three rebuilds, they didn't quite hit it properly. And I still like the three rebuilds, but it didn't hit it like this one did. This one, it was like, nope, here's your themes. I feel like Anno had all this time, like 8 years, to think and sit about this movie and stew on it. And then when he finally came and wrote the script and did it, I was like, okay, cool. Because this is kind of like, it feels like End of Evangelion, but it feels like a post-End of Evangelion, which it is. But then the ending kind of has that same, like, sort of, it starts to happen, and it just, it's really good. I really like this movie a lot. But the newness that works, so we have the OG callbacks, all the old stuff, right? We have the themes. The newness that works, there's a lot. This is going to be probably a big column. And then there's the newness that's not needed. This isn't a perfect movie, by far. It's not a perfect film, which, what films are perfect? They're like a handful. And it's all subjective anyway. But I would say that what I didn't necessarily like or prefer in this movie, the good far outweighs. Like, there's more good in this film, I think, than there is by ratio than any of the other rebuilds. I really liked this movie a lot. And I kept like thinking about it. I was like, man, this is really good. There's a lot of stuff that does not make sense. And that'll be over here. But that's fine. But I think that for me, my type of Evangelion content, I was like, yes. Now I'm sure that we're going to talk about the movie for God knows how long. I'm recording this at night. Who knows how long this discussion will take. But we're going to talk about it and kind of go through things that I think I could see the fandom kind of taking issue with, and things that I like, things that I was kind of like about. But there was so much in this film that I was like, I'd been waiting to see if we'd actually get confirmation on and see what would happen with. I was totally about it. I was like, okay, cool, great, let's go through this. So they give us a recap, like a 4-minute recap of what's been going on the last, because honestly, this came out, 8 years after 3.33? This came out 8 years later. So yeah, your audience has had a lot of time to wait and possibly forget the events of the last 3 films. But God, trying to summarize like 8 hours of content into 3 minutes, it was almost humorous. It was like, yeah, it was just like chaos. You should have just put chaos on the screen and Shinji's having a bad day, and that would pretty much have summed it all up. But yeah, I do agree. Christopher Peterson and I were talking in the comments. I do really like that we see the characters walking off in this post-apocalyptic wasteland. And the final like lines there as they're walking through the desert, as Asuka's dragging Shinji along, is that there is always hope no matter the circumstance. That there can always be an ideal outcome no matter what. You can always view the glass half full if you want to. And I think that's a big thing, because one of the things about the original series is that it does get kind of melancholy, and it does have that kind of vibe of the glass will never be half full. It's always just a glass that's half filled. And so what I like about this series, this movie in particular, is that it does offer that more hopeful ending. And I think that may be expressive of Anno's, where he's at mentally as a director and a writer, which I'm glad for. I'm glad Anno's in a stable place for this film, because he deserves to be, right? I did go and watch the 3.33 preview. I found it on YouTube. I was going to react to it, but then I got overzealous and was like, I just want to go ahead and watch it. It's mainly just Asuka and Mari's rebuild Evangelions merged into one, fighting off the Evangelion machines that are at the beginning of this movie. That sequence is not in the movie, but it's fine. It's okay. But yeah, it's okay, sure. It wasn't too big of a deal. But yeah, so we had that recap, and then we cut to the main event, right? And I like that we start out with a song. We have a song over the wordless, soundless credits, which is really cool. And we just go straight into this battle, straight into it. The fact that they're in France, in Paris, France, battling these angels. Like, I felt for a second we were going to go on a global world tour, and I was like, oh, we're just going to France? Okay, cool. Nerves back in Japan. We're just going to jet over to Europe. It seems fine. It is a little weird that we go from Paris back to Japan. Seems like that would take a long time, but it's fine, I guess. But yeah, I do think things that really work. The opening sequence in this film was a lot better, I thought, than 3.33. Because in 3.33, Shinji's there. We have no context of what's going on. Because here's the thing. Whenever the second rebuild ended, it ended with like the End of Evangelion style ending. And then we cut straight to chaos with no explanation of what's going on for 30 minutes. And then suddenly we find out there's been a 14-year time skip, and Shinji has been stuck in this coma-like state, we assume, and there's been all this stuff going on. But for 30 minutes of the film, which is a third of it, we have no clue what's going on as the audience. And that part was a bit jarring and distracting. Here, the opening scene, we know Shinji and Rei and Asuka are separated from the group. We know that going into this movie. So the fact that they're not here at the beginning, it's like, okay, good. We're focusing on Masato and Ritsuko and the others aboard the ship, aboard the Wonder. We're going to focus on them. And we know we'll eventually get to Rei, Shinji, and Asuka, but it's just not right now. So you go into this film, if you've watched the one before it, with kind of a context of what's going on. Even if this is a brand new scene and it's in a totally new location, with this crew, you kind of feel like you're more in the know than you were at the start of the third rebuild. So I like that a lot. So the opening scene works much better. I liked that a lot. I liked that we were in Paris. It was somewhere new. Mari used the Eiffel Tower to smack an angel. When would we ever say we would see that? I don't know. The city of love, indeed. Another thing that I really liked is the idea of the contamination. The contamination and the idea that everything turns this blood red, and it's just dyed red like it's radiation, and it's just like consumes the city, and it's just this, you can't wash it off. But then they have a way of decontaminating. We'll talk about it when we get to it. But they have a way of decontaminating it to make these little pockets of livable areas on the planet. I mean, the science doesn't make sense. It's pretty fantastical. It's not really a sci-fi at this point. It's more sci-fi fantasy. Because, like, what's the logistics behind that, honestly? But I'll look through it because it's a cool visual and it's really neat. And it's Evangelion, so there's always a supernatural factor to it, right? I'm going to say that that's probably the newness I don't know if it's a newness not needed. It's just some of the sci-fi stuff you're like, this logically doesn't make sense, but turn your brain off. We don't watch Neon Evangelion for the sci-fi. We're watching it for the character development. Let's be honest. The sci-fi is just a bonus. But yeah, I do like the idea of this little sing-songy thing playing while they're all aboard. The fact that the thing lets loose and all these battleships are used like fan blades, like that's really cool. That shot where the battleships become part of like the weaponry and the shields. and they just float around like floating battleships. That's so freaking cool. I loved the visuals. It's like they're on marionette strings, and it's kind of awesome. I love this opening scene. It's great. And then Mari, I like that it makes more sense with Mari and her Evangelion that the arms were ripped off. So she has this like sort of wheel around her that's kind of like a sort of like an artificial limb that's letting her move around and do things. She has the steering wheel that she messes with. That's really cool. It's obvious that there's been a little bit of time pass between the last rebuild and this movie, but not enough time to replace limbs, not enough to fully heal things. So they kind of have to do like a rough and ready approach of how they fight these angel creatures, whatever they are, these Gendo creations. And I kind of like how it's done. It's very creative. It looks really cool, and it kind of makes sense with the story. So I'm all about it. There are a few things. So the 44 A's. I do want to make note. The 44 A's and the 44 B's. Gonna make note. How? Because it's just Fuyu and Gendo. It's just Fuyu and Gendo. That is one thing about, like, Nerve. Who be there? That is one thing that I liked about the newness is I'm glad y'all didn't spoil me, but we do get more of the crew. Crew moments alongside Ritsuko and Masato. I was very glad about that. I was like, okay, we're going to get more with the crew, more with Masato, more with Ritsuko. I was really happy about that. That's great. The one thing is, it's such a contrast because we have the Will crew, and we get to know them a little bit more, and we see that constantly with Will and the Wonder Ship and everything, there's like all these crew members, it's fully staffed, there's people running in and out of the hospital wing, Sakura's there, Toji's sister, and they're constantly like wheeling the injured around. Like there's a sense of community and a sense of humanity on this ship that is helping to make it run. With Fuyu and Gendo and Nerve, we only ever see Fuyu and Gendo, so where's the rest of the crew? Where's Nerve's crew? Do they have a crew? Is it because Gendo has this godlike power since he's merged with the Wonder Majig that he now doesn't need a crew? He can just use his psychic powers to control it? What is that? The one thing that I was like, I wish we'd seen more of was actual Nerve crew members, but maybe they don't have them. Maybe it's all automated. Maybe the Evas just run themselves. For a series like Neon Genesis that has spent most of its time focusing on very realistic aspects like crews running things and the maintenance, like we spent half of episode 5 or 6 was just them getting ready for a battle and not the actual battle. The actual battle was 60 seconds. So for a series that devotes so much time to the making of the moment, with Nerve, we don't really ever get any of that. It's just, here's 80 and angel robots. Did Fuyu-chan spend all night staying up and putting them together? Maybe. but we don't get any explanation as to how it happens. It's just they're there. Maybe they made themselves. Who knows? Maybe a little Kaoru came through the window and put them all together for us. We don't know. But it's never given an explanation. That's the one thing that draws me out of the movie a little bit. It distracts me constantly, and it did during the reaction, because there'd be like the moment when like thousands of Evas are attacking. I'm like, who had time to put all this together? When was this happening? I mean, we saw a conveyor belt back in the second rebuild with equipment, but who was assembling it? So my mind just thinks realistically of those types of things. And then I wish we'd had more of an explanation, or it could have been something like a one line from Gendo being like, now that I have this godlike power, I can put all of this stuff together myself. That's all we needed. Would have solved my questions, and I wouldn't have thought twice about it. But because we don't have it, it seems a little illogical, but does it distract me? No. I do like their cat suits. It feels very like, I don't know. It feels like a callback, I said Power Rangers in the reaction, but it feels like a callback to like 80s teams where they're all in different colored suits and they're all like fighting in a giant mech. It felt very mech, right? It was interesting. But I'm glad that we see Hyuga's okay, Alba's okay. And then they all have the blue armbands, which we didn't know what was the purpose of those. I don't think those were in the other two movies. But we find out later it's because it's to represent someone they've lost in the impact. Okay. But yeah, this whole fight sequence, like, it's great. There were a couple sequences that I feel like they were made specifically for a movie theater experience. Like, you would need to have seen, like, to fully appreciate Mari in the Evangelion fighting off these angel drones. They look like drones. The angel drones, the 44As. I feel like you would need to be in like an IMAX or a theater to really appreciate it. And that kind of happens towards the climax too. There's a few scenes that I'm like, this was clearly kind of tailor-made for a theater experience. It's fine on the screen here. Like, it looks cool, but I don't know. I'm not saying I get bored with action sequences, but they're not totally my jam. I'm just like, oh, that looks cool. I don't freak out about it and fangirl about it, I guess is what I'm saying. So it was neat. I liked seeing it. It kind of drug on a few times in a few places that I don't think you needed all of it. You could have moved on, but it was still cool. Like, they had a fourth wave and they're outnumbered, but it's like, you know, Mari's going to be okay, blah, blah, blah. And so then they managed to overwrite. Like, Mara's like, quit whining. Maya's like, quit whining. And so, yeah, but Mari showcases that she is perfectly capable of handling things by herself. That is one thing that I like. We get more with Mari. For better or worse, we get more with Mari. And that's kind of my issue with Mari the entire series, is that we just haven't gotten enough with her. She's just been... In the second rebuild, she was literally just there. She shoved her boobs into Shinji's face, which we'll talk about that at the end. She shoves her boobs in Shinji's face, parachutes on top of him, and then she disappears. And she expects that Shinji's going to remember her forever because of that experience. I guess that would be pretty memorable. But we get more with Mari. I like Mari when she is with Asuka and when she is battling. I think that she is a tactical person, and I like her in a fight because she's kind of what I would imagine if Toji had been allowed to be an EVA pilot. She kind of reminds me of what I imagine Toji would be like, that Toji would be the more strategist. He'd be the more level-headed, calm one in battle, whereas in the original series, you had these 3 traumatized kids in these suits, whereas Toji would have probably been the most stable. And I think Mari kind of, oddly enough, is the most stable of the 3 of them. So yeah, I like her in this. I like when she's battling, and I like all the scenes she has with Asuka. Her and Asuka have good chemistry. I thought they were... Well, we can't have her paired up with Asuka, clearly, because we'll talk about Asuka and Ida, my crack pairing of the ages that has come to fruition. The fudge! Did I talk in the original series about Asuka and Ida being together? I don't remember if I did or not, but I'm 1,000% here for it, and based on this movie alone, and we'll talk about it. They've got some cheek. But yes, they bust through this wall, like this AT field. Okay, the thing's not needed. What is this nonsense? The boss battle incoming. That is something. The military use of EVAs like this constitutes a violation of the Vatican Treaty. It's like they have a giant laser beam on top of these 4 EVAs. I guess that's something that was not needed. The mech battle aspect. Because that's kind of the whole point of Neon Genesis. I came into Neon Genesis thinking this would be a series about mech battles. And I was honestly kind of like, I don't know. It's a classic, so I'm going to give it a chance. And then after the first episode, I was like, oh, well, this seems like it's going to be way more than that. And then by episode 6, I was like, oh no, this is way more than that. And then it just got better and better. And I loved it more and more. And so I don't watch Neon Genesis Evangelion for the mech battles. If I'm honest, the original series, I don't even recognize it as a mech anime. It's a psychological thriller horror, if anything. And so in this film, and with all the rebuilds in general, anytime they try to just make it like a mech battle, I'm like, but that's not the point. So I'm like, the point is Shinji and his journey. And in this movie, it's Rei, Shinji, and lots of other characters in their journeys. But the mech battle aspect of it, like when this Dr. Robotnik style villain shows up in the first battle, I'm like, that just seems kind of hokey, and I'm sure some people think it's cool and badass, but for me, that's not Neon Genesis. And I was like, oh, it's fine. It's kind of ridiculous, the way that it's constructed. It looks cool. I say it's ridiculous, and my favorite angel is a giant floating blue pyramid. What do I know? Right? What do I know? But yeah, so this giant laser shows up, and then I like that Akagi is perfectly comfortable. I like that she has on the green catsuit, but she wears the doctor's coat over it. Why? Akagi doesn't need that doctor's coat over it. She has like a plug suit on. Why does she need the doctor's robe? Just to distinguish who she is as a character. That's why. It's just kind of funny because I'm like, what is she gonna do? She's so used to wearing that coat. She's like, I need these suits don't have pockets. I need something to hold my pencils. And then you wear the 44 Bs. Now, I will say this. The marching 44 Bs that are literally the Evangelion bodies that are connected with this drill and these weird, like, chargers, they have a cool design, and I like them. I'm just sitting there thinking of how they were all constructed in a short period of time. And I'm like, how did Gendo and Fuyu-chan alone pull this off? Fuyu-chan's literally 77 years old. But it must be Gendo and his inhuman powers, right? Makes sense, right? But God, her using the Eiffel Tower as like a way to stop the boss, just freaking badass. Mari definitely kind of stole the show in this first scene, which was great. And then it's like all the rainbows, all the crosses, all the rainbows. The animation in this film, for the record, beautiful. 90% of this film, gorgeously animated. The 10% that's CGI that we'll talk about towards the climax, but 90% of the time, beautiful animation. Absolutely gorgeous. The soundtrack, again, oh my God, the soundtrack was beautiful. Like, I honestly, now that I finished all 4 films, I can't wait to just go through the actual soundtracks and just listen to them all. When we do the manga reviews, I may have them playing in the background, like just faintly. May have them playing faintly in the background. That'd be a lot of fun. Might be doing that. But yeah, like, what the hell? And so yeah, we have the decryption key. So they're Black Chamber Nerve EU sealing pillar number 1. So they're trying to seal everything out. Okay, the sealing system's locked. Okay. So they're activating, they came up here to activate the purification pods. That's what this was, to shield off part of the city, the Paris former area, and now Euro nerve freezing systems are being reactivated too. Okay, so I do like that. I like the decontamination, the purification centers. Okay, the purification centers. I like that. That's really cool. The idea of creating little habitats, little pockets where humanity can survive. I like that. It's a neat concept, right? And it goes to that theme of nature reclaiming itself. Because they have like all the animals starting to come back. The idea that even after a disaster, nature can eventually, with time and some assistance, can reclaim itself. I like that. I like that theme that this develops. But yeah, and then so they make the city into this, and Nerve has a new logo, right? It has a new logo. Let me go back here. Yeah, it goes back. It has like a new like blue logo there. It's interesting. But yeah, they just form like Paris as a Nerve, Tokyo 3 kind of. It's kind of cool. And then everybody's so happy that everything went well. I like it. And I'm glad that Masato's not dead. At first I thought she was dead. Also, I like that Akagi gives Maya some praise. There's a lot of moments from End of Evangelion that kind of come full circle in this. And I was like, oh, that's cool. And one of them was Maya and Akagi and getting praise. I was like, look at that. That's really cool. I'm kind of all about that. I like that a lot. So yeah. But yeah, so we got that scene there. And then they're getting all the supply management vessels ready, which is good. And so they're looking to build a new combined type unit 2. So inside of all the buildings, there are bits and pieces of the O2 unit that they are reconstructing. So that's kind of cool. All right, so they're getting all that done. And so wherever you are, I'll come get you. I'm going to go back and see Maya say that. If she's talking about Shinji or Asuka. We're going to scavenge all the parts. So in the end, the end crowns the work. With this, we'll be able to rebuild the new combined type unit and Unit 8 remodeled for overlapping compatibility. So Asuka and Mari can basically use either one, I'm guessing. She says, wherever you are, I'll come get you. Just wait a little longer, puppy boy. Okay, so I don't know whether to put it in not needed or works. I don't know where to put it, so I'm gonna just put in this weird category up here, Shinji and Mari. I'm so lost on it. It's the weirdest thing. I don't hate it. I just don't know what to do with it. Like, I'm so curious to know what people think of this, because the whole time I was like, okay, she's looking for Shinji. Why? She cares about Shinji. Why? And at the end, she's like wanting to be with Shinji, and he seems okay with it. Why? The theme of this movie, I kept saying it throughout the reaction, and it got to the point where I had to stop myself. As I was watching, I was like, do I say it again? But it feels needed. But the whole phrase of this movie was why not? Why not do it? I guess at this point, I think the thing that works for me with Mari and Shinji is that there's not any bad chemistry between them. But the thing that makes me so befuddled is, like, there's not really a lot of chemistry between them. There's really not. It's kind of like she met him, she fell onto him, she shoved her bosom into his face, and then she disappeared for a movie and a half, and then she asked him to save Asuka. And I thought she was trying to be a wingman for Asuka, and then she's like, no, hell no. And then suddenly she's all about Shinji in this movie. And it just feels like it kind of comes out of nowhere. I don't hate it, but I was just kind of like, huh. What? Okay. It's just kind of new. And it's kind of confusing. It just, I don't know what to feel, because I have not really anything. It literally is a crack pairing that they decided to maybe make canon by the end of the movie. And I'm like, is this real life? Because, yeah, usually like a crack pairing is based on a couple that has very little to no interaction. And you're just like, wouldn't that be funny if they got together? Haha. And then here it's like, oh, wouldn't it be funny if Shinji and Mari got together? And by the end of it, it's like, wouldn't it be funny if Shinji and Mari got together? So it's just, I don't know what to think about it. So I need to re-go through this movie and figure out maybe where it's all coming from. I don't know. To be fair, I think, again, the one thing that has helped me to be okay with it is that Mari was never mean to Shinji. She's never been cruel to him like Asuka. So, and she's never been like overly like motherly or anything to him. She's always just been nice to Shinji. So, okay. I mean, she's not mean to him. Why not? Let's go for it. And so, yeah, the planning, story, and script was by Anno. You can tell. There's a lot of Annoisms in this movie. You can tell Anno did the script for it. And maybe the script for all the rebuilds, but I think this one's the most cohesive. I do love the opening credit sequence. The opening credit sequence where they're going through the city, and it's red. There's the headless Evas, the walkers. I love that. Yeah, the headless Evas, the walkers, and the opening credits are really well done. I love them. I also love like the way that the gravity, like the third impact has affected the gravity to where if you get caught in a certain pull from the egg, it kind of just makes things just kind of warped and floating. Everything's dyed red like blood, and it's just all suspended there in animation. You see the parts and pieces you see all the different things that we have seen throughout the series. So you have like all the locations from the series, but it's all like destroyed and dyed red with blood, and you see on her little scanner there like the LCL levels. It's really cool. I'm all about it. I love that we also got like back to Anno basics where we have like the wide shots and the gorgeous backgrounds. The visuals in this movie, I would say, now 3.33 probably has some of the most disturbing imagery as far as like the horror-esque parts of Evangelion. But this one, as far as like the beautiful wide shots, the backgrounds, all of that, like I think I might have liked this one the best. I liked the shots of all that. So yeah, so Asuka's on her mission to reclaim everything, get back to... Well, but here's the thing. She's like, they're trying to go... They find their way to the base. That's where they find. They find their way to the base that the Angels and Nerve can't get through, the decontaminated zone. But I like the cars, everything floating, like it's all good. There's a little moment where, like, little tiny animation details where Shinji starts to falter and Rei turns back and goes and grabs him. Like that a lot. And Shinji's just in a bad place throughout all of this. He can't help it. But, like, the hand, yeah, the floating hand there, like, above the power lines, like, it's all just, it's gorgeous. I love it. And so, yeah, so we had a warning here. It said battery extremely low. And it's like at it says it's like at 400% or whatever it is. Or maybe it's like 0.5%. But it says the battery's really low on the suit. Okay. It says suit operations impacted. Okay, so you can't technically operate the EVAs because of the suit malfunctioning. I do love this shot where Asuka grabs Shinji's face and like makes him look at her. That shot, like, it's dark, you can barely tell it, but it's a great shot. Like, just some of the animations on the faces and the gestures are so good. But her grabbing his face and then being like, "You gutless coward." So and then Rei's just standing there like, what do we do? And then we see like them show up and it's Ida in the Suzuki, getting that product placement in, that Suzuki showing up in his little hazmat suit, saying, "I'm sorry I'm late, my bad. You okay, Kari?" And then he wakes up. Oh my gosh, with the little kid and the dog. And the little kid is not Toji and them's, but is a patient's dog. But okay. So, with that being said, we'll put Shinji on here at some point. But, y'all, we could have just stopped the movie an hour in and I would have been fine. Would have been fine with that. About swallowed that ice cube hole. Would have been fine with that. Because it's like a dream come true. The whole thing with Toji as the doctor. So yeah, in big letters, Toji, Ida, and Hikari. Glad y'all didn't spoil me on this. I'm so glad you didn't spoil me on this. This is like the frickin' best. I love it so much. I do. Toji, and here's what I was lamenting, and I said I'd talk about it in the discussion, but what I was lamenting is we were talking about this in the comments, and the whole curse of the Eva thing, it never really sat well with me in the third film because I wanted to see them all grown up. I was telling somebody, it might have been Alexander Q, I don't remember who I was telling, or Christopher Peterson, one of the two, but what I really was hoping for when we found out about the 14 years thing is that everybody had grown up, and I thought it was a missed opportunity because if you really wanted to move away from the original format and say that the rebuilds are their own thing, then age everybody up, because then it is its own thing. They're adults now. It's different. And we do that at the very end. We show that at the very end, but then I was telling somebody in the comments, I'm like, well, they probably didn't want to do that because, marketability and branding, we have the trio have a set look, and if we change that, it's not, as marketable, so what do we do? And I was like, well, screw that. We should age everybody up and see them as adults. So the fact that we got Toji, Ida, and Hikari as people in their, like, late 20s, hell yes. This was like a dream come true. And I'm sure some people in the comments, they'll be like, it feels fanficky. And I'm like, well, so does that giant mech battle. So does the beast mode. That's like, to me, the beast berserk mode is fan fiction to me. I'm like, that just reads like, it's so like cliche and tropey, and it's just very shonen. Like this stuff though, I don't care if it's fanficky. I'm like, show me adult Toji, show me adult Ida, show me with them in a happy family and a little kid. Yes, please. I just love Toji as an adult. Like, this was the good ending for Toji. And him holding, like, the little kid. It's been a real long time, Shinji. And he's instantly, like, fine. He's like, I was beside myself when they brought you in. I heard the rundown of what happened to you, and I don't completely get it. I love he kept his, like, Kansai Ben accent. Stuff's complicated. Yeah, Neon Genesis, complicated is an understatement, right? But you're okay, and that's the main thing. Can you move yet? And we see this like makeshift like hospital wing here that they've made it all work. It just looks like a rundown building, right? They've just made it work to what they can do and work within their means. And I like that he helps like Shinji get... What I like about this is the theme of childhood versus adulthood. And maybe that's why they kept Shinji and Asuka and Rei as kids. Honestly, maybe that's why they did it. Because if you had aged them up, because Shinji and, I mean, Asuka kind of seems more mature, even though she still looks like a kid, but she's not been like in stasis this whole time. She has actually grown up alongside everybody else. She's just stuck in a 14-year-old's body. So she mentally has matured, right? So it's a little bit different. But I feel like maybe they kept Shinji and Rei as children because Shinji's like emotional state post the third rebuild movie into this movie seems more apt for a 14-year-old to have. Like a 28-year-old, it may not have came off as sympathetic, maybe, I don't know, but it also kind of represents that like Toji and them are in adulthood, and they kind of become, oddly enough, Toji and Ida become mentors to Shinji in adulthood, like Kaji was to him. So it's kind of crazy. So I guess that was the intentional reason behind it. It's fine. It's not my favorite part of the story narrative-wise, but I see in this movie, it makes more sense. In this movie, the idea of like the child versus adulthood and Toji and Ida being a representation of becoming an adult to Shinji, that makes much more sense here. Whereas in the third rebuild, it wasn't explained, so it just kind of went nowhere. So here it actually has a purpose. And Rei like looking at the dog, like Rei looking at animals. So Rei's journey of self-discovery. Yes, please. Rei's journey of self-discovery. Here for it. 1000% here for it. I like the idea, the theme of identity and choices. We'll talk about that. Yeah, I'm all about that. I could watch a whole movie about Rei learning about the world. We pretty much watched like an hour of it. I like that Tamiflu gets a product placement here. And so yeah, then they go home and we see that they're just making this makeshift world. They're just using the resources they can. That there's all these people still, the survivors. This is one of the settlements the survivors went to, and it's like they say the clinic in Village 3. So Village 3 is what we got. So I also like the idea of credit, which is such an on-the-nose name, right? Credit and will. And like the government forming, like from the ashes, them forming and developing another, like a government all over again. I liked that a lot. It was very, again, like Neon Genesis, it was very realistic. The way that it was explained, it's like the Wild West. They're all just trying to get by. And the credit Masato comes by and supplies food to them, which when we find out Masato's son lives near here, makes sense why she's making sure this village has got some food. Her growing boy needs something. I still can't believe she died. I'm really sad. But yeah, so there's also, we talk about in this film, I'm going to go back just a wee bit. But they see the woman that's about to have a baby, right? And she says, "Oh, good afternoon, doctor." And he's like, "Oh, yeah, Matsukata-san, you look about due." And Rei is looking at... So Rei, we get the idea of Rei and motherhood. Rei, motherhood, and the cycle of life. And I'm just going to say that all felt very old school Neon Genesis. I liked the idea, the cycle of life and birth. Because we see Hikari nursing the baby, and Rei's like, "What are you doing?" And that felt very much like a callback to when we see Yui nursing Shinji. That seemed like a callback to that. We see the pregnant woman, we see the cat that's pregnant, gonna have kittens, and Rei's kind of infatuated with that because she's a clone of Yui, who is a mother, so she innately feels that pull, but she doesn't know what to do with it. And so, like, that stuff I loved because it felt very Neon Genesis. It felt very, like, psychoschematic, like it was bringing back those ideas, those concepts. And it's just the idea that life goes on. And it goes along, too, with Anno's theme about connecting with humanity. About, getting out and interacting with people and forming these relationships and bonds. And it's kind of like shows that when you can form those bonds, you get beyond the hedgehog's dilemma and you can start a family and you can like have those intimate relations with someone and develop that relationship. And Rei is learning about that and how that starts and builds upon itself. And so I think that felt very Neon Genesis. I liked that an awful lot. But yeah, Toji, I just can't believe he's grown up. My heart. And he's living with his dad. Like, we find out that Ida's dad's passed, Hajime. But yeah, Toji is living with his father-in-law and his mother. He has a daughter. And Rei's discovering what soup is. It's great. And he's like, my girl knows how to prepare a meal. And yeah, I just love it. Hikari, like, my dreams have come true. Hikari and Toji are together. It's the best. She was our class prez. And then he's like, I feel like I'm dreaming seeing you guys in front of me. And Rei's like, oh, I'm not Ayanami. And Hikari's like, oh. And he's like, oh, well, you're not then. Well, what should we call you? And they're like, look-alike-san it is. And they just instantly agree, like, the cutest couple ever. And then, yeah, the baby. And Rei, this scene here where Rei is like, what is this? What is this tiny creature? And like, our daughter Tsubame. Tsubame. Oh, I'm sure it has a really cute meaning. But yeah, and then they have the daughter. They have the daughter Tsubame. Let it be known that Hikari's family genes are strong. That baby does not look like Toji at all. I'd be like, kind of looks like Ida at first. And I was like, are you sure, Toji, that you are the father of this child and it's not Ida? You certain about that? I love Rei saying, like, Rei's like, why'd you shrink it? It's like, Rei was so adorable in this movie. She's so naive because, again, she's a new version of herself, so she doesn't know these things. And so she's having to learn it all. All she knows are orders and being isolated in the Evangelions. So she doesn't know about babies and stuff, which is really cute. And then I love that it's like in this little puffer vest, and the baby like instantly loves Rei, because of course it does. Of course it does. How could you not like Rei? And she's like, oh, she's like, is this cute? I'm like, yes. Like, she's our daughter. And Rei doesn't know any different, so the time skip stuff doesn't affect her. But Shinji is just this big ball of just melancholy. And honestly, it reminds me of End of Evangelion, where Shinji is just kind of catatonic throughout of it because of what happens post episode 24. It very much reminds me of that, right? So there's that callback of Shinji in that Ep 25, 26 during End of Evangelion state. He's just kind of in this state of does not know what he's going to do. And he just doesn't feel, I mean, you get where Shinji's coming from, because he's like, I caused everyone's life to become hell. And in the last movie, he was told that several times. And so he just feels like I made a boo-boo, and now Kaoru's dead, and the fourth impact was nearly caused, and we all nearly died again, and I was the cause of it, right? So he's dealing with a lot right now. I could see where people would get mad at Shinji because he's kind of inactive the first hour of this movie. But honestly, it's not much different than how he was during End of Evangelion. Not really. It's not much different than how he was in episode 25 and 26. He was all like introspective during there. So at this point, I'm more happy that we get focused on Rei and what she's doing. And Shinji, it's like, yeah, Shinji's kind of depressed and in a state right now, but we'll get to him, right? And we do, and things happen, and I'm glad about it, but we'll get to that. But I like the focus on Rei, right? And so then, yeah, we cut back to the song playing where Rei notices the mom. She's like, what are you doing? She's like, oh, I need to like nurse my baby. And she's like, oh. And then Rei's like, well, am I supposed to do that? And she's like, oh, well, you're not exactly ready to do that just yet. You should do what you want to do. And Rei saying, I'm allowed to be different. I like that. I like Rei's journey of self-discovery where she's like, oh, I don't have to be like the other versions of me. I can be my own person. Again, Rei gets the shaft. She goes through this journey of self-discovery, figures all this stuff out about herself, becomes a really cool character, and then she dies. I'm like, why? Show. Like, it doesn't bother me, but I was just like, are you joking? Just Anno. Couldn't let it go. And then Ida shows up. I'm just like, Ida had a damn glow up. Are you kidding me? Ida had a glow up and becomes this like super competent person that's a general. I was like, damn, Ida. All right, look at you. And he's instantly like supportive of Shinji. Like him and Toji both, like their friendship they had with Shinji from 14 years ago isn't gone. That's like the one thing when Misato's so cold with Shinji in the last film, it was like a shock. It was like somebody just poured a bucket of cold water on you because you're like, Misato was so kind and caring to Shinji and now she wants nothing to do with him. You find out why in this movie and it makes a lot more sense. And it's like, okay. But Toji and Ida from the start are so supportive of him. And I think that's one of the reasons that Shinji is so upset too, because he's like, I made your lives miserable. You guys are living in this shack, like living month to month, meal to meal with limited resources, and your lives are nothing like what they were. And it's all my fault. I'm to blame for it all. And you all are still looking at me like I'm old Shinji, your friend, and you're kind to me. I don't deserve it. Like, that's kind of like what he's saying. He's like, I don't deserve this kindness that you're offering me. He's like, you shouldn't give me this. Like, he just wants to retreat. Shinji wants to retreat and he doesn't want to open up and make those connections with these people. He doesn't have his Walkman either, so he can't do that. So he's just kind of stuck there, right? But damn, Ida, what a glow up. And he's like, okay. And he's like, Kensuke is the one that saved you. Mm-hmm. I can't count all the times this guy's been the survival nerd he is. He helped us out too. Yeah, because it's true. Yeah, Kensuke was a survival nerd. Back in the OG series, he had all the survival gear. So yeah, the idea that Ida being the survivalist, I kind of love that callback. I love it. And one thing that I like it too is that Toji, he acknowledges to Shinji later, he's like, I'm not a doctor. He's like, you don't have time to go to doctorate school during the third impact. You just don't. He's like, I don't have time. He's like, I'm just helping any way I can. But back in the original series, that's what Hikari liked about him, was that he was always wanting to help people. And they took those two things from Ida from the original series and they built upon them and made them stuff that was about them in the adult life. And I'm like, yes, that's the callback that I wanted. Good, thank you. Thanks for that, show. It's great. And Shinji he can't have it. And I love when Toji and Ida look at one another, it's very much that look that they had during the original series, like, this kid, he's going to need some help. And of course, Hikari's dad doesn't understand. He's like, you know, if you not eat the meal you've been served, they're in the middle of a war against nerve. They're rationed. They barely have enough food each month. So they consider everything to be sacred. And it's almost like this theme that surviving leads to this appreciation of life. I feel like it is a theme and a statement coming out saying that these people, after they've gone through hell, they realize what they took for granted and realize just how important the bonds with others are, as well as, you know, just having a meal, how important that is and that it's sacred. You shouldn't take it for advantage or you shouldn't take it for granted. And so, yeah, I like that theme a lot. That's really cool. It's great. But no, Shinji, they're like, he's been offered invaluable food and hasn't taken a single bite of it. And so then Hikari's like, just calm down. And so, yeah, then Ida's like, I'll take him with me. I think it's for the best. Oh, Ida. And I like Ida's sweet pad. He's got like that train. He's got that train that he's got connected to the cart there. It's cool. So he has the optical thing. Yeah, he's got the camera, of course. I love that Ida keeps the same, like he has the camera and everything. He's like, oh, wasn't it unexpected that those two got married? I'm like, Hikari and Toji? No, I called that like way back. That was pretty obvious. How much they fought back when we were in school. I'm like, did they really fight a lot? Maybe they did a little bit. I felt like Asuka and Toji were the ones that fought, not Hikari and Toji. But what's cool is that they go back the same way like they were going to school. They go back like on the same route. Except now they're adults and it's all like grown up. It's great. And so all the hardship of the near third impact brought us together. And Ida says, see, Hikari, it wasn't just bad things that came out of the near third. So what I like about that is that Ida tries to tell Shinji, like, look, I know you're beating your... Like, Ida's like, I know. You're beating yourself up because of the third impact and you feel responsible and guilty for it. But not everything that happened because of it is a bad thing. Like, Hikari and Toji got together. We're going to find out that Masato had a kid and that he's doing well. Like, he's like, not everything that came out of the third impact was bad. And you shouldn't, beat yourself up about it. But of course he still is, right? The animation's just great on this, by the way. I'm probably going to say that like a million times. But it's just great. And they climb up the hill to get to his place. I cobbled together a house out of a station that wasn't being used anymore. Which I love that symbolism that it's a station. It's literally the train station that's Ida's house. And it's where Shinji and them kind of meet up at. I like it a lot. It's great. There are little clues in this, though. The bathroom's in the back of the car. I'll get some fuel, you go inside. And there's the shower, right? That shows it's just been used. And then there's Asuka standing there. Of course Asuka's nude. Did we expect anything different, right? Did we? And she's like, oh, She's like, I'm naked. Why aren't you getting all hot and flustered? And Shinji's like, well, because I found out I like guys. I think I'm bisexual. That's what I've discovered. Shinji's too traumatized, right? And she's like, I can't believe Kin picked up this annoying jerk. Okay. Asuka and Ida. Asuka and Ida. Kensuke Ida and Asuka Langley as a pair is the ship I didn't know I needed. Is the ship I didn't know I needed. God, it's great. Asuka and Ida. I'm 1,000 times here for it. And the crazy thing is, not in the original series. Not in the original series, no. But in this series, hell yeah. No. And the first thing that would like give the hint of it is she calls him Kin. I'm like, why? When has she ever given anybody like a nickname other than calling Shinji Baka or a brat? And then he's like, oh, I'm home. And he like goes up to her and he's like, oh, she's my other guest. She'll probably be staying a while. And like he just puts the towel over her like it's no big deal and moves on. And I was like, but here's the thing. Asuka, like in the original series, she wanted to be seen as more mature and like be with Kaji because he was like a grown man. And Shinji's not a grown man at this point, but Ida is. And the thing of it is that Asuka, even though she's in the body of a 14-year-old, she mentally is 28. She has the mental capacity of a 28-year-old. And I'm fine with this pairing because of that. Like Shinji's been in a coma for the last 14 years. So he mentally is still in the state he was in the original series. He's still in that Rebuild 1 state of being 14 years old. Asuka has the mind of a 28-year-old, just like Mari does. Which makes the Mari-Shinji thing at the end kind of whatever. but anyway, so Asuka has an older mindset and she's been around and has matured even though she's stuck in this 14-year-old body. And Ida's just totally fine with it. He's like, no, it's cool. And he doesn't blush around her. He just accepts her and goes along his way. He's like, oh, she's staying for a while. And she takes the towel and everything and wraps it around her. It's just a pain. There's too many Lilin hanging around. And she has the collar on as well, which is interesting. So it's curious. She was fighting in the Eva to begin with, but I guess it shows that even though she was fighting the Eva, it was a way for Masato and them to still keep control of her, where she wouldn't go off the rails and do anything she wasn't supposed to. So there's that. That's interesting, and that's what gets Shinji to wake up. That's what makes him throw up, is that he remembers Kaoru exploding and throws up. Not surprising, I would have done that too. And she's like, wow, I guess that's the only thing that gets a reaction out of you. Yeah, she's like, my naked body didn't get a reaction out of you, but seeing the choker did. It's like, no, we just lost Kaoru from it. Why wouldn't it? And so, yeah, then Ida cleans it up. And she's like, oh, Ken, you're being too easy on him. Let him clean up his own mess. I still am like, okay, I'm still like, Asuka just being like semi-nude in Ida's cart. Like, there was no other clothing y'all could have found her. You found her a bandana and a jacket, which I'm assuming the jacket's Ida's, actually. So that she's wearing Ida's. That should have been clue number 2. She's wearing Ida's clothes. But yeah, she has, like, no clothes on, like, there. And he's like, oh, he's not eating right now. He can't do anything by himself either. Something really traumatic must have happened. And she's like, well, how's he any different than normal? Like, she doesn't give him a break. But, she's just hanging around playing her video game. And she basically says what's been going on with Shinji. He shuts himself off from everybody, which is not untrue. Same old, you know. Just leave him. He doesn't want to live, but he doesn't want to die either. And Ida's like, no, I'm a kind and caring person. He's like, you're all right for now. Oh, it has to be fate. We got reunited. You can count on me. Ida's so damn good in this. Like, we didn't deserve Ida being this good. But yeah, I kind of like that. I guess you could take the semi-nudity with Asuka hanging around Ida's place as being she's super comfortable around him. That she's comfortable and he's a mature adult. So he's like, whatevs. I guess you could assume it was that. And it's not really, for the most part, it's not very fan servicey, so I'm okay with it. There's a couple shots, like, here in this next scene that I'm like, why? But I guess for the most part, like, her just carrying around Ida's jacket. It also shows her attachment with Ida in that she's comfortable wearing his clothes and using that as a cover-up. Whereas, you know, old Asuka would have been like, I don't need your clothes, and probably would have been like that. No, here she accepts it. Should have been sign number 3. He says, I'm your friend, and I'm happy you're still alive. And then we have Asuka, like we have Toji, and he's asleep. And he's just like the rations manager, like Toji talking in his sleep. It's so cute. She's like, always working so hard. Aww. I love it. I love that they have the baby on one side, and she's on the other side next to him. And Ray's just like, what's good night mean? And she's like, oh, you sweet summer child. Let me tell you. And so, yeah, then we have the suits and everything plugged up. Like, Asuka has more clothing. She's just not wearing it. But yeah, the scene where we cut to Asuka, like, in bed, like, again, the camera angle, it's literally just like a butt shot and a crotch shot. And we did not need it. I'm just like, again, the fan service poses and angles. They had a reason with, they were kind of, I mean, normally they were with Masato in the original series, and Masato's, her whole character was kind of built on her using her sexuality around men, and it was kind of like a joke as well, and so it made sense for Masato, though, because she was a grown woman who was using her sexuality to try to manipulate men, so it made sense why they did some of those shots, because that was part of her character. But Asuka is not really a person who uses these sexual advances on men like Masato did. So the shots like that, the sexualized shots of this, I know she's 14, but she's technically 28. The shots don't really serve a purpose. They don't explain her character anymore. They're just fan service. And I'm kind of just not about it. Like, I think women are sexualized enough in media when they don't intend to be, that do we really need to do that? We don't. The answer is no. I think I commented on somebody's comment. I'm like, you don't see like close-ups of Shinji's balls throughout this. So why do we need a close-up of Asuka's ass? It's just like, it just doesn't seem warranted. But she's like, I wonder if I'll ever sleep again. Like, she just can't get comfortable. And then we cut over to where Ida is sleeping by Shinji, and Shinji's just crying. Like, he's just crying, and Ida's like, Like, he's just trying to figure out what to do. What to do about my friend. What to do to make him feel better. How do we solve this problem? And so we go out and we actually see, like, what life in Village 3 is like. And I love Rey in the little kimono thing, the red one. I was like, Rey should have wore that the whole film. It was really cute. I liked that on her. But Hikari being exceptionally nice, and then just figuring out, like, telling her that she could go to work and things like that. And then Shinji, of course, it's like, it's such a contrast. You have Rei waking up and Hikari's making breakfast. She's like, oh, good morning, Rei. How you doing? And then you cut to Asuka and she's like, kick Shinji. She's like, get up, brat. It's like, but yeah, she like tells Shinji, she's like, it's 6 a.m. Ken wakes up at 6 a.m. every day. He's already gone to work. She knows his schedule. Flag number 4, she knows his everyday schedule, right? When he wakes up and goes to work, like, she's been awake at the same time. She's like, breakfast is over there. Hurry up and eat already. All right. And so then we cut to her working in the fields with the ladies. Again, wholesome Rei content about her discovering herself and learning about the hard work everybody's putting in the village and everything. It's wonderful, and I love it, and I am just living for these moments. It's great. But yeah, they put her to work, and she gets to learn about making things, and they slowly like teach her a little bit about herself. She learns what sweat is, all that stuff. It's great. And then like the little girl, I thought the little girl might have been Toji's kid too, because she kind of has like dark hair like Toji, but she's somebody else's kid. And Rei just learning like to give thanks and saying hello and goodbye. Like, Rei's just learning everything from the beginning, just starting all back over. And her getting in the bath. But here's the thing, they don't really make Rei getting in the bath sexualized, which is good. So I don't know why Asuka gets all of the moments, but whatever. It's fine. And then Shinji hasn't ate any of his food. And Asuka's just like, you're trying to make us feel sorry for you, huh? And at this point, I do think that Shinji, he is wallowing in his despair quite a bit, but he's trying to come to grips with everything and how he feels. And Asuka just is not about it. She's like, no. She's just like, you're trying to make us feel sorry for you, lying in that corner and refusing to talk. She's like, I want to sweep the floor, so you need to move, you annoying brat. And meanwhile, Rei is like back at the clinic, right? Okay. And they teach her hello and goodbye. And then we get the idea of the handshake. And again, we contrast. I like the contrast of Rei. The contrast of Rei versus Shinji and assimilating back into the culture. Rei seems to handle it very well, but Rei doesn't have as much baggage because it's new Rei. Shinji has all this baggage and he just can't bring himself to do it. And Asuka just gets fed up and she's like, I've had enough of this. Nope. Where she's just kicking him. And she's like, you're going to eat the food. You're making life harder for us too, you know. And he's like, all right. And then he sees the choker and he freaks out again and retches again. And she's like, oh, you're puking again? And that animation where she just like shoves the limbus bread down his throat. She's like, you should be grateful you get fed in the first place. You're still a pseudo Lilin. You can't just not eat. Okay. So one thing that was kind of like, okay, I didn't think needed to be there, but is the idea that all of them are kind of clones in a way, that Rei and Asuka and Shinji are all like pseudo clones, which I guess if they all became part of the LCL goop and came back and they've been tainted with angel DNA, that maybe that would explain it. It's not given proper explanation in the movie, but it's fine. I just don't think you needed it. We know that Rei's a clone because Gendo cloned her from Yui. That part makes sense. I don't think you needed to make Asuka and Shinji clones if you were going to blame it all on this curse of the Eva. I don't think you needed it. It seemed like the cloning thing was added as an explanation of the curse of the Eva, because maybe they realized that the curse of the Eva is kind of lame. They're like, we need another excuse for it. But it just didn't seem necessary. I didn't think you needed it. I think you could have been fine without it if you just said that Asuka and Shinji didn't age because they've been Eva pilots and that's the curse of the Eva. I guess it works, but I don't think you needed to explain it anymore or add the clone business. I don't think it was needed. But she's like, get it down already. All I live on is water. You might as well savor the shitty food before your body decides to stop growing. Okay, so she says all she lives on is water. And so she's trying to keep him from ending up in the same place that she is. Okay, so again, much like in the original series, you have Asuka projecting onto Shinji. So maybe Asuka was trying to keep him from falling in the same route that she did. Maybe that was it. But, I mean, I've never... It's been hard for me in the rebuilds to ship Shinji and Asuka. Just because they just don't have that chemistry that like Shinji and Rei had chemistry all throughout the second Evangelion. They were together a lot. And then Kaoru and Shinji were together a lot in the third End of Evangelion. And they had really good chemistry. And it, because there was that bond, right? You had two characters attempting to bond with one another. And then here, Asuka's not really attempting to bond with Shinji. She's just pissed off at him because he's reminding her of herself, and she can't take it. And so I think I never really shipped Asuka and Shinji, especially in the rebuilds, because most of what Asuka's interactions with Shinji are just her projecting onto him and just making him feel bad, and then just, you know, she doesn't try to bond with him necessarily, but just kind of gets mad at him because he reminds her of herself, and then just gets flustered and acts on it, and then they don't, you know, get any closer because of it. So in the original series they did to an extent, but in these rebuilds, no, they don't. And so it was really hard for me to ship her with him. And I was really afraid this movie was going to go that route and be like, oh yeah, Shinji and Asuka are endgame. And I was going to be like, are they? Because I don't think they should be. I don't think they're good for each other at all. They don't have the personality to be compatible. So when Asuka started getting all up on Ida, I was like, I'm on board with this. Sure. Okay. Can do. And so yeah, but she's just like, you're too scared you'll get hurt again. If you've got so much free time on your hands, how about you think about why I tried to punch you in the face before? So yeah, Asuka's trying to get him to realize why he was punching her in the face. And I like that was like a theme in this movie. I like that was like a thread of, okay, why was Asuka the way that she was to you, Shinji? What was the meaning? And I did like that by the end of the film, he could verbalize that. He could get what she was getting at. So that was a nice little bookend, a nice little thread that came back around and got answered. I liked that. But damn, girl. She's like, you have the weakest mind. Everything you do backfires and there's no fixing it. You just don't want anything anymore. You don't want to do anything since it's all your fault. She's like, I know your father told you to do it, and with your utter lack of resolve, I would have rather you never have piloted that Eva. Yep. I love it. So yeah, she knows, like, Asuka reveals that she knows why Shinji is in the state that he's in, and she knows a lot about what led him up to this point, but she's like, what are you going to do about it now? It's in the past. Get over it. Move on. Like, you can't change it. You just got to move on with it. She's like, I have to do that, so should you. It's really good. But yeah, I mean, it's a really good character moments between the two of them, but I definitely don't ship them because of it. And then Shinji gets up and he leaves. And she's like, and he starts to walk off. You can see him walking off in the distance. Okay, and she's like, well, enjoy your pity party, brat. Yeah, I mean, yeah, at this point, Shinji, he's just working through everything. And I like that Ida tells her, he's like, let him go. Let him work through it. He needs some space. Let him have some space. He'll come around. You'll see. And we see Shinji go on this walkabout. And it's beautiful. It very much mirrors the hedgehog dilemma, right? Is Shinji's walkabout. It mirrors the hedgehog dilemma, and it ties back to him like needing space to think about what he's going to do. And then he discovers, of course, he goes back. All trails lead to the side of the beach where he met Kaoru. And Pin's there. All the penguins are there. And it's the same spot where he and Kaoru played piano. It's beautiful. Like, just the wide shots and everything in that moment. Mwah. Gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. And of course, Asuka's been going to check on him the whole time. But she doesn't, like, you know, make him do anything because she doesn't want to make him run away even more. She just checks and see where he was at. So Asuka does care about him. She just is like, he's a baka, right? And she says, I'm home. Or he says, oh yeah, Ida says, I'm home. Where's Ikari at? And she's like, he ran away. He's like, is that right? Leaving him alone might be the best option for now. She says, where'd he run off to? The ruins by the lake up north, where Nerve HQ used to be. Maybe that's fate too. And asks if he's eaten. But just like the band, like the talking between the two of them, it's so natural. And Asuka's always been so abrasive towards everyone, except for Hikari, who is her friend back in the original series, that the fact that she talks so naturally to Ida, I was like, am I forming a ship? And then it's there. And he says, thanks, Shikanami. She says, for what? I'm not doing it for him. I just can't let him die before he pulls his head out of his ass. I love it. It's great. And then, yeah, Shinji's just collapsed there and doesn't know what to do. And then Rei, so they ask Rei to get a new name. And I didn't know where this was going. I was like, is Rei going to get a new name? Because Asuka got a new name. So maybe Rei deserves one. But I do like that in the end, Shinji kind of comes a long way in that he finally admits, he's like, because the whole last film, at the end of it, he was like, she's not Ayanami. She's not Rei anymore. She's different. And then it comes full circle in this movie because Shinji goes, no, you are Ayanami. I don't know you as anything else. And it's like, I love that. I loved that. The idea that Rei is Rei. And so then she goes the weaseled, but what can we do? But why don't you get a new name? And it's like, am I allowed to? Yes, she is allowed to have her own name. And we see the cats, everything. I love the concept of the library on the train car, that they converted the train car to a library. I want one of those in this life. I want one of those in this reality. Why can't we make a train car into a library? The shelving and then using the booths as seats, that's kind of perfect. I want that. I want the live. I like the adaptation. The adaptation of the post-impact world. I like how they've converted things and made them resourceful and used them in different ways. I'm like, yeah, hell yeah, I like that. Do it. It's great. But yeah, and so then we have Ayanami learning from the kid about the book and saying thank you. And then she gets Ochibi and the porcupine. I thought for a second that her name would change into Ochibi. I was like, that's what she was going to want to call herself after the kid that looks like Where's Waldo and the porcupine. But the story that she reads is about someone chasing after the porcupine. And it's literally her chasing after Shinji, who is represented by the porcupine, a la Hedgehog's Dilemma. So then we cut back to Asuka with the puppet saying, I'm alone. I've always been alone, always will be, totally alone. And that's just how things are, Asuka. And then, but girl getting that gun, as soon as she hears something, she's like, nope, and ready to go Rambo on it. I love it. But we do get more into Asuka's character, into Asuka's loneliness and her character. And I'm like, nah, I get it. It's a lot more developed. We don't have the mom subplot as much here. We get a taste of it at the end, but we don't really have much here, but it's mainly just her being lonely, which works. Works fine. It's character development. I'll take it. And then she calls Rei the original batch, which again ties back to that whole cloning thing, that she's the original set of clones. The original cloned kids for the Evas. Again, it's not needed. I'm not crazy about it, but whatever. And so I do like the interactions between Asuka and Rei. They're nice. And Rei's Asuka has maxed out her points. She's at level 999 and she has 999,999 points. And she's been playing it for an hour and 12 minutes. She's maxed out the game. She can't go any further, right? She's just doing it as a distraction. She says, us pilots and the Evas are the same in that they gave us restraints at design time so we can't transcend human limits. So yeah, so there's this little explanation that they're much like the Evas. They don't age and they have certain design restraints. And Asuka is lamenting that and tells that part of Rei's is that she's meant to, we see the inefficient emotions we've got. Those are because we were designed in compliance with human cognitive behavior. Okay. The Ayanami series were calibrated to take a liking to the third boy. So yeah, that part's part's kind of weird. I'm not crazy about the cloning thing. I would have liked it if it was just them and they weren't all clones. Like, Rei being a clone makes sense, but Asuka and Shinji too? She's like, nerve engineered your feelings. And Rei's like, I'm happy this way. I don't care. I'm still my own person. I like that Rei's like, despite what I've been made to be, I'm still okay with who I am. So that's fine. And she's like, the object of your affection is over at the N109 tower. And she says, thank you. Like, Rei talks more, and she's like, bring some rations. He must be running out of fuel by now. I do like though, that so Asuka, you know, she's clearly been watching out for Shinji, and she's like, you need to take him his rations. He's going to need it. And he's going to run out of fuel. And she has sent, like, the literal terms, like the Lilin, the fuel, things like that. Like, it's very non-human. But then Rei's like, you stay in this village. Are you not working? I'm like, burn, girl. Rei's like, I've been pulling weeds and, like, pulling my weight around here. You're sitting here playing a video game. Do you need to go get a job? Rei inadvertently calling Asuka a bum is freaking hilarious. And Asuka's like, are you stupid? This isn't somewhere I'm meant to be. She's like, it's somewhere I protect. So that's like her cool way of saying, I don't need a job. I'm not staying here. I love that. But I love that Rei's just like, think you can get off your butt and do some work? It's great. And meanwhile, we have the rainbow over the ruins, right? Kaoru's always there watching you, Shinji. He's always there for you. He even had, like, and he sees Rei, like, floating there above the white moon. Again, as Rei comes into the picture. She's like, I've been taught to return things to their owners. And man, him sliding that radio away, that Walkman away, was great. I loved it. The moment he sees that, he chucks that thing away, and it was very satisfying. And then she leaves him the food. And so, yeah, he's still not ate the food. And then he kind of, like, succumbs to it and, like, decides that he needs to eat. And, of course, he's, like, crying as he eats because he hates it. And Shinji's just getting it all out of his system. And I'm sure there were a lot of people watching this movie that were kind of disappointed with Shinji at this point. But I'm fine with it because Shinji's been through some shit. He's been through a lot, and we gave him a lot of grief in the last film. So you know what? If he needs to take this time to sort things out and take a breather and get his priorities straight, do it. If it gives Rei time to do her thing and Asuka time to do her thing, that is fine. Do what you gotta do. And then we get this great song. Starts this montage. Everybody's working in the gardens and stuff. Rei's gathering, like, cucumbers. She's chopping up logs and everything. She's gathering chicken eggs. The ladies are laughing that she's gathering chicken eggs. And then we cut back to the clinic. That woman's about to have a baby. And Toji's doing his doctor business. Rei's checking on the cats. It's great. And they're all sitting there at the dinner table together. Like, Rei's just had a journey. Rei's had an adventure. And it's really, really cute. And I liked this part a lot. Like, she's in the classroom learning things. Like, it looks like Ida. Ida's a teacher. Oh, that's so cool. Ida's, like, teaching the kids. I like that. Okay. See? This stuff's all really adorable. And then meanwhile, Asuka's checking up on the town. Ida's fixing like the pumps and everything. He's a working man. Ida is a handyman. Asuka, girl, I don't blame you. Ida, glow up of the century. But yeah, then Rei and everybody, they're all just there. And then meanwhile, Shinji is just still, it's such a jarring contrast that everybody is like working and doing things, and it cuts to Shinji who's still like stuck in the past and wallowing. But not for long. Because as he's going through, like, Rei's come back to give him more things. Shinji's eating all the food. Cut back and see everything here. And then Rei goes back to visit him again. And Shinji's like, I didn't protect anything. She's like, you're just sitting there. She's like, are you protecting the village? She's like, Asuka says she's not doing anything. But she says she's just protecting the village. That's her excuse. She's like, are you doing something? And Shinji's like, I can't do anything. I destroyed everything. He's like, I don't want to do anything. I don't want to talk. I don't want to see anyone anymore. I just want to be left alone. So one thing that's very cool about this is the Shinji versus Gendo comparisons. God, the Gendo flashback when we get to it. Okay. But I do love the Shinji and Gendo comparisons where just like Gendo wanted to be left alone and didn't want to be around anybody, Shinji at this point, he's like, every time I'm around people, bad stuff happens, so just leave me alone. Why would I want to be around people anymore? I just need to be away from everyone. And Ray's like, okay, well then, he's like, why are you all so nice to me? He's like, I did all these horrible things. And she says, because we like you. And Shinji looking back at her like that, where he's like, what? Again, speaking of the same voice actress, it looks a little bit like Yuji from Jujutsu Kaisen, or Yuta. Shinji does. But yeah, he's like, you still like me after all of that? And she's like, yes. She's like, thank you for talking to me. And she offers him her hand. This is what we do when we want to bond with someone. And Shinji just can't take it. He's like, it's all just reminding him of shaking Ray's hand back, at the beginning when he got into the Eva with her. And she's like, this is what we do when we want to bond with someone. And he wanted to bond with her. And then she was replaced and she died. And he was just so heartbroken. And now he's seeing her go through that again with him. It's so good. It's so well done. He just sobs and cries it out. And for Ray's talked more in this movie than I think she has the entire series. And that's all it took. He had to get it out of his system. He had to just speak it all out. And she's so patient and understanding. And then he's like, okay, I got my catharsis. I cleansed myself. I had a good long sob. I realized that Ray is still Ray after all of this. She's still moving forward. I need to finally just pick myself up, pick up the pieces, and maybe do the same. And so then he goes back to Asuka. I like that Asuka's like, well, end of escape thanks to the original batch. He says, yes. She says, now that you're feeling refreshed, now that you've cried out all your tears. Yep. And she's like, right, now you can move again. Go help Ken. I love that she calls him Ken. I'm good for Ida. I'm glad him and her make a couple. I'm all about it. And so then Ida takes him to, I like that Ida is also in charge of doing agriculture, industrial maintenance. A man of all trades, right? Ida, what a guy. But they go to, they kind of explain the decontamination fields, and that he's like, we didn't really know what we were doing at the time, so we just kind of had to do makeshift. He's like, we were all kids. We were 14 years old. We didn't know what to do, so the adults that were there helped us, and we just did what we could, and we made it work. And I love that they go to the shrine, they stop there. This whole scene here, all the atmospheric stuff, the stuff of them wandering through the ruins and everything, just Ida and Shinji, it felt very much like episode 4 of the original series. It was great. And then they explain the decontamination pods, which I really like. I like that they're trying to maintain nature that's existing there. And so he explains the decontamination pods purify and get all the contamination out to where there can be pockets of living humans. It works for me. I'm all about it. And then he says it's literally the water of life. And I liked that the blue bandanas were blue because it's the water is needed for their survival. That was a cool tie-in. I liked that. And I like when they get to the edges. And he's like, oh, here, he's secure some food. So this theme here of Shinji fishing. Shinji fishing. That was really well done because Ida gives him the fishing rod. We'll get the walkers and all of that later. I thought we were going to get to it now, but we'll get it later. But he gives Shinji the fishing rod and says, here, he's like, you need to fish. Get us something. And Shinji says, and it's basically like Gendo telling him to get in the Eva in the first episode. And Shinji says, no, I've never done that before. I can't do it. He doesn't even want to try. He's like, nope. He just wants to run away from it. And so Ida says, it'll be fine. You'll never know if you don't try. So it's you have to try. If they had just phrased If Shinji was back in episode 1 and he was telling everybody he couldn't get in the Eva and go fight the angel because he didn't know what to do, if Gendo had just used a fishing metaphor and been like, well, Shinji, have you ever tried to fish? Oh, you won't know till you try. It might have been a little different. Now, granted, fighting an angel in a giant mech is a little bit different than putting a fishing pole in the water, and the stakes are a bit different, but I like that it's that parallel, right? He's basically saying you'll never know if you don't try. You shouldn't run away. You should just give it a go, right? And then Shinji is lamenting because they didn't catch any fish, and Ida's like, it's okay. The quota's a fish per week. There's always next time. So it's, again, against an angel, there's not really a next time, so it's a little different stakes, but I do like that Shinji gets a dose of it here, right? So then we get into here. Yep, we get to the contamination. The Will's parting gift. The complementary L containment field, purification, invalidation, inference unit. What a title. I do love that it's like everything else is floating around it, and it's just the sea of contamination from the impact, but this tower is just purifying it. Now, where the tower came from, how it was built, logistics, pew, pew. Don't need them. But I do love it. It's a cool concept. I like it a lot. Thanks to that, it's avoided coreization. Okay, we owe Masato-san and her group a lot. And I love that Ida has his camera still. He's like, they've been showing up lately. We call them wanderers. Wanderers, not walkers. I don't know where I wrote walkers at. But yeah, the walkers are wanderers. I love the idea of just these headless Evas that are mucking about and they can't get past the purification system's shields. It's freaky. It's creepy. It's cool. I like it. They work against the wanderers. There's jobs even a handyman like me can't do, and if that thing stops working, it'll be it for us. Okay. Cool. I like it. And so then they drive on. As you can see, there's no telling how long this place will last. So it's very temporary, but we're going to struggle on and live until the very end. I love it. Like, Ida has this kind of... That's why Asuka likes him. He has a Kaji-like appearance. That's what it is. He has, like, the 5 o'clock shadow like Kaji had. He's kind of got this cool demeanor, and he's a handyman, jack of all trades. Like, he's like Kaji, and that's why Asuka likes him. Makes sense. And then, of course, Ray's next to the pickled plums. Ugh. I cannot stand pickled plums. They're gross to me. But anything with vinegar is kind of like... I like pickles, and that's the most vinegary thing I will eat. It's like, ew. But Toji apparently really likes them. And I love that Ray is now strapped with the baby strapped to her. It's great. Life is a continuous cycle of trying and good times. But there's nothing wrong with every day feeling the same. Isn't that how it should be? Like, if you have a cycle and it's good, why change it? Why make it bad? She's like, I'm the youngest I'll ever be right now, so I want to live life to the fullest. And then there's Tsubame too. Oh, she's more attached to you than me. It's like, well, Ray is like a baby magnet. You should live here forever, lookalike son. And so she goes, Shinji's trying to learn to fish. See? So we cut to Shinji trying to learn to fish. And then Ray tells him that he wants her to get a name from him. And he's like, I don't know. I'd have to think about it. As he's thinking, he's like, but you're not Ayanami, but I don't know what else to call you. And she says, any name will do. She's like, I want to have a name that you gave me. So meanwhile, we have Asuka. I guess she's just drinking water that whole time, every time she's there. And Ida always has his like workbench. Like he has his house set up with like a workbench. And he's always like tinkering with something. Asuka doesn't have clothes. And and so Asuka's of course asking about Ray. It's like, she came to see me again today. Why? She says, that's fine then. So maybe, was Asuka aware that Ray was going to gloopify at some point? Was that always in the back of Asuka's mind? I don't know. So then we have the idea that the big chestnut suddenly turned around and ran off. And the idea that Ochibi-san chased after it. But so we got the thing with her little, with her wrist though that goes off, right? And it says on there, it says that low battery, let's say something danger, something, we can't quite read it. And then we see the LCL tank, right? And then when she freaked out, like leaned forward and like crashed, I thought she was going to start a fire and kill that baby. And she says, I see, I can only live if I'm at nerve. So she's running out of battery, and her running out of battery means that she's going to liquefy. But I thought for a second that she was going to start a fire and kill that baby. And I was like, oh no, don't you do it, Anno. But she's fine the next day, but she's slowly going back. Ugh. And there's like all the rainbows and Seal and everything. Seal did not have much of a presence at all in this movie, which I was fine with because Seal's been kind of prevalent the rest of the films, and they kind of like had their big moment in the last film, so I'm fine with them not really being there. It's okay. But then Toji and Shinji like go on a walkabout. I can't get over Toji being so tall. Like Toji's like so broad and tall, and Shinji's still like 14 and like really short. I love it. And he's like, oh, that's good. He's like, this village was a ragtag bunch of strangers, but we finally settled into a life here. And he's like, it was really hard. And this part here, he's like, a whole lot of stuff happened. Yeah, can't imagine, right? But there's like a darkness here in this scene where Toji's going on about how like, I like the concept of strangers, the idea of strangers becoming a community. Like the idea that strangers becoming a community. He's like, we were all a bunch of strangers. We all had AT fields of our own, but to survive, we had to get to know each other and work together. That's just what happens in situations like these. And he's like, a lot of stuff happened. And then Toji says, he's like, definitely wasn't the kind of world that clueless kids could survive in. We had to grow up really fast and do everything ourselves. And that line from him where he says, I've done things for my family I can't bring myself to think about. It's like, that's all that needs to be said. Like, we don't get any emaboration. That's it. Just Toji's had to do. He's like, I couldn't afford to be naive if I wanted to survive. And we see all the nerve, like the planes and stuff crashed there in the distance. And he's like, I'm not really a doctor. I'm just helping people. And that's just what I've had to do. And Shinji's like, you are admirable, Toji. You're saving people's lives. And he's like, there are lives that I can't save. But I keep on going because shouldering all the grief and anger is part of the job. So that's Toji giving Shinji this lesson, being like, look, he's like, anger and guilt, they're part of life. There's going to be things that you're mad about and things that you feel guilty about and grieving that happens. But you just have to keep going. You can't let it control your life. He's like, no. He says, I got to pay for my mistakes and take responsibility. He's like, I've got to take responsibility of my life. I can't just run away. So I like that message that he's giving Shinji about, just taking responsibility. And the funny thing is, the nice thing is that it's a great callback to the original series where Toji and Shinji kind of became friends after all the things that happened between them. And this is kind of like the extension of it and a development of it. I couldn't ask for more with Toji and Shinji. Like, this is giving me all that I wanted. He's like, that's what I'm trying to live by. And I really feel like that affects Shinji a lot. He's like, you've done enough fighting for us all. He's like, you should just stay here and live with us. He's like, you don't have to carry on and shoulder these burdens. And he looks so mature there. Like, Toji looks so old there. Like, it's crazy. But then we see Asuka and Shinji and Ida there at the little grave markers of the fallen. And Ida's dad is one of them. Mm-hmm. And Asuka was respectful enough to put on some clothes to go to her father-in-law's grave. Mm-hmm. My father survived the near third. Oh, so he survived the third impact. It never even crossed my mind that he died just like that in an accident. So it wasn't even the impact that killed him. He's like, I should have done more with him. He's like, your father's still alive too. This part was really crazy because Ida's like, I should have done more with my dad while he was alive. I didn't. He's like, well, Shinji, your dad's still alive, right? And I'm like, what do we call it that? He's like, it might sound like a waste of time, but you should try talking with him. You'll regret it if you don't. And that kind of is a cool thing that ties back around. What I really like is that Ida, he gives Shinji the advice to talk with Gendo. honestly, now that you think about it, that's the reason that Shinji even talked with his dad at the very end. I mean, I thought it was all Rei. I thought it was Rei back in the original series saying, have you ever tried to understand your father? I thought it was mainly that. But this moment here was kind of the catalyst too, where Ida's like, just like Toji giving Shinji advice, and Ida's like, you should try having a talk with him. You'll regret it if you don't. And at first Asuka's like, that's going to be too much for this guy. This is Gendo Ikari we're talking about. And I was like, Asuka, true words. But Shinji finally gets up to the challenge at the end. And he's like, well, Ida says, but they're father and son. It's an eternal bond. It's fate. Fated battle between father and son. Who knew? Who knew? Back when the original series was... Oh my god, I'm going to have to go back to that episode because I remember in the original series, I was like, I thought that the original series would end with like Gendo versus Shinji. And I remember there being a bunch of black box comments and I was like, and now I bet you all were like, well, there is Gendo versus Shinji. It's just the very, very end of the series, not the end of the TV series. Look at that. Look at where we are. I feel like Paul Rudd, like, look at us. But yeah, so from there, we get Rei and everything. And when Rei showed back up, I was a little confused because I was like, she passed out, so is she okay? But then we find out that, well, she's not okay. And she put on the clothes. I love that of all the clothes she could have put on, she put on the same outfit that she wore as the school student. Yep. Because we can't have Rei in a different outfit than she's normally in. And then I do love the shot of like the Eva hands coming out of the ground. Like, again, there's lots of cool like Eva imagery that is very much, it was just like a callback to the OG series. I was like, no, this is really cool. So they wear the hazmat suits and they go to this testing purification work, right? Where they're just testing things out. The L containment field is relatively weak out here, so they're conducting restoration experiments. This is Credit's outdoor lab. And they want him to meet the guy on the staff. And the moment I said Arkaji, I was like, because he's named after his dad. He has his father's name. He says Mr. Ida. And then we see that, yeah, God, he looks like he's a perfect mix of Masato and Kaji. He has Masato's hair and he has Kaji's face and eyes. Like, yeah, he's basically their kid. He's like, is this your new assistant? Yeah, something like that. I've never met an outsider before. And then he does the thing, I'm Ryoji Kaji. And he offers the hand like, this is someone I want to bond with. If I'm being completely honest, at the very end of this movie, when he was telling Masato that he met his son, I was just sitting there thinking, am I crack ship pairing Shinji and Ryoji together? I was like, I kind of was, because I mean, like, if I'm being honest, Shinji, I think, had more chemistry with Ryoji in the 5 seconds we see them together than he's had with Mari this entire series. Again, I'm not against Shinji and Mari. I'm just completely blindsided by it. I did not see that coming. I was like, why? And he's like, what's your name? And then Shinji's like, oh. And he's like, he's a nice guy. What'd you think, Shinji? He's a nice guy, huh? Think you guys could hit it off? He's like, that name, Kaji. And he's like, yeah, he's Masato and Kaji's son. He'll be 14 soon. So see, they're around the same age. It's fine. It could all work out. He knows nothing about his parents. That was what Masato-san wanted. She felt like she couldn't be much of a mother to him. So she wanted to protect him as a head of will instead of involving herself in his life. Which, there's that idea of parenthood that is established in this, of like Toji and Hikari being parents, of Masato and her being a parent to her kid, and then of Ritsuko watching after when Masato leaves Ritsuko with all of the others to watch over. It's like Ritsuko's kids. I will talk about that when we get to it, but at this point I was like, that's why Masato was so pissed at Shinji when she met him again in Rebuild 3.33, because he kind of was like, she lost Kaji and her son because of him. I'm like, no wonder she was mad and felt like betrayed. All makes sense, but she still cares about Shinji. That's the thing. But everything that I was complaining about with Masato and her being cold in the last film, it all is given a context in this. And I'm like, oh, okay. Now we're talking. Now we're making some sense. All right, good to know. But then, of course, Kaji died to stop the third impact. And so he's like, Masato regretted making him take all the responsibility. And Ida's like, you're not the only one who's hurting Shinji. Calling him Ikari. I like that, like, Ida never calls him Shinji. He keeps calling him just Ikari-san. And he's like, Masato's in pain as well. Mm-hmm. And so them all going back. And Shinji's sitting atop the rice fields that Rei was working in. And at that point, Shinji realizes he smells the earth. And thinks of Kaji. And it's like, the light shines down on him, like Kaji's shining down from above. It's wonderful. It's great. I love it so much. Yeah, he's like, Kaji-san. I also love that Asuka's suit is always hanging up in various places around Ida's shop. I'm like, so were these all places that Ida and her, like, did things at? I don't know. She's like, Wonder's coming to pick you up tomorrow. They negotiate a return route. Okay. And it says, what does it say? Priority. And we see, like, it's attached to something. It's plugging up the suit. Okay. The records of the village that Masato-san asked for. Okay. It has photos of the Will Crew's family members. And that's a letter from Toji to his sister. Told me to tell you he owes you one. And she smiles at him and says, okay, I got it. And like the two of them looking at each other, I was like, by this point, I was fully convinced. I'm like, okay, this is a thing. Because she's like smiling at him and like, they're a couple. Okay, I'm great. I'm happy about it. And then Rei has the black spot on her arm. It's literally the black spot. The moment she saw the black spot on her hand, I was like, maybe you shouldn't be touching that baby with your contaminated fingers. I was really afraid that, like, the contamination was going to spread on the baby or something. I had the worst expectations of what would happen in this movie. I kept thinking something horrific was going to happen in this film to Ida and to Toji and Hikari's baby. But no. And she's like, and Rei's crying because she realizes she's about to die. This is loneliness. Because she's all going to be alone. Okay. And then Rei tells everybody goodbye and goes to see Shinji. At this point, I was like, we're an hour into the movie. I thought to myself, we're an hour in. This has all been going so well. And then the moment that Rei goes, poop, I was like, well, we had nice things for 55 minutes. I'm glad because, oh my God. And then she starts changing back. I do like her suit starting to turn back before she pops. Like her suit powers down. She's like, I wanted to hold Tsubame more. And Shinji's like, don't you do it. And it just like does the triple take back. That was great. She's like, I wanted to be with the person I liked forever. And then like, you're just waiting for her to blow up. You're waiting for it to happen. You just know it's going to happen. You know it. And then she just pops. And Shinji, God. And you can tell he's been crying because when he shows back up again, his like eyes are red. And like, yeah, she just disappears. Oh my God. I'm like, our boy Shinji. And I think that's the catalyst where he's like, okay, Rei's gone. We got to do something. We got to go back. We got to go back. Cause it's like, they knew they were going back to the Wonder, but it's like, all right, what we do now? And I like that Shinji is ready to go. And Ida's still videotaping. Again, another sign that they are together. It's just like, all watching this again is just like, it should have been known, is that Asuka's like, cut it out, don't film me. And he's like, I'm just keeping a record of today. And she's blushing and she doesn't punch him or do anything. She just hides her face. And then she lowers the hand blushing like, and pulls the hood over. And she says, fine, suit yourself then. I was like, well, I'm just so floored, y'all. This is great. And then we see Shinji. And Shinji's like, he's got the shirt buttoned up, got the player. He's like, let's do this. Let's go. And at that point, I liked that it was Shinji's call to action. Is that Rei confided in Shinji and was like, I wanted to keep living and be with the person that I liked and do all these things, but I can't. Sayonara. And Shinji's just like, well, you know what? I've lost enough people today. Let's do this. Let's go find my dad. So I like the idea of Shinji maturing. That is one thing I really like about his character in this movie, because something that in the original series, it's very realistic and it makes a lot of sense for Shinji to kind of spin his wheels. And I feel like in this film, yes, it happens very quickly. Shinji like turns over a leaf at the, a third of the way of like a 2/3 of the way through 2/5 of the way through the film, he takes a turn and then he's like, let's do the damn thing. And I could see where someone would think that was too quick of a twist, too quick of a turn, and that it needed to be more gradual, kind of like the series. But I think in terms of this being a movie, it needed to happen like it did, and I was totally fine with it. I'm glad Shinji reached this place where he, we've gone through 3 movies of Shinji being in this dour state. It's about damn time. And so now we're here. And I like that even Ida and Asuka are like, they sense that something's up. And also Ida and Asuka are matching, like a damn couple. And he's been crying and he's like, let's go. Let's do this. He tells Ida, thank you. And then Asuka's like, well, we got rules to do. And then she zaps him. I was like, ah, damn it. But he wakes up to Sakura. And Sakura, of course, slaps him because she told him not to get in the Eva. And that's what he did. And then we're back to Sakura watching over him. Okay. And they take him to a containment unit. Okay. And then gives Sakura the letter from her brother. And I do love that sweet, tender moment where she gets the letter from her brother. And it's really sweet. And she like starts crying, seeing the baby and everything. She's probably not seen him in a long time and didn't know he had the baby. It's really sweet. It's a great moment. And so they have test subject BMO3. They're getting all the stuff, the gear ready. And so we get more with the crew. I'm happy we get more with the crew. Yep. Let me find them on here. We get more moments with the crew members. Kitakami, girl, she was getting ready to shoot somebody up, but I like that we get justification of why she is the way that she is. We find out that her family died in the third impact. She's mad at Shinji about it. All I needed. And then we get stuff with the other crew, like the one guy trusting Kaji, and so he trusts Masato. We get the idea they've all lost. Like, he has a whole arm full of people that he's lost. Like, we get more with the crew, and it's moments that I'd wanted from the second movie, and I feel like we get it in this one, and from the third movie, and I feel like we get it in this, which is great. And so, like, the captain... I like that Hyuga stands up for Masato, too. Again, a nice callback of Hyuga standing up for Masato being like, hey, the captain's doing what she thinks is right. Y'all were in the OG series. You don't know how this bond has gone. Like, you don't know the context. And then the one guy's like, well, Kaji entrusted Will to her, so I trust whatever judgments she has, even if it's about the cursed child. And Kitakami's like, you're all too soft on them. She's like, same thing with this water made from God knows whose pee. Like, because it's purified water, you think purifying it is enough. Doesn't work like that. Oh, so the concept that the water they're drinking is someone's urine that's been purified. Oh, she's like, just because you made it look like water doesn't make it water. So she's saying just because Shinji looks like a human doesn't make him a human. It's like, okay, I'm down for it. I like it. I also like that we get more of the talking overhead while they're communicating. We get more of that. It's fine. And then Asuka's back there with Mari. So she's like, they're losing faith in us. They've added more explosives. So we get this idea that there's a lack of trust. The lack of trust with the pilots, which is a cool subversion because in the OG series, it was like, oh, the pilots are the saviors. And now they're like, have collars restraining them and they have explosives to their, hideout, to the living quarters, not their hideout. And so it's very interesting to see this kind of subversion of it. But yeah, Mari and Asuka's space is not really much of a space. I feel like Mari's like all snuggling up on Asuka and kissing her and stuff. I like if Mari and Shinji are like our bisexual king and queens of this series, I'm here for it. All right, that's fine. Maybe they're just platonic besties. Who knows? But yeah, what happened to cleaning it out? It's just gotten more stuff piled in it. Okay, interesting. My impossible dream is to read every book from every time and every culture. Is there any progress with Puppy Boy? She's like, who cares? I'm not interested. Oh, you care not for teenage boys? And I like this. She's like, the brat doesn't need a lover. He needs a mother. I'm like, oh, girl. Yeah, kind of. Shinji don't need a romantic relationship at this point. He needs like some nurturing and not romantic kind. So what I like about this is that we have, and like Mari's sitting there like with her arms wrapped around Asuka, like blushing and everything. So that's curious. So I'm like, we have Asuka no longer crushes on Shinji. I was all about that. I was like, good. She's admitting that she had a crush on him. She liked him at one point, but now she's moved on from it. It's fine. I thought this whole series of Rebuild movies, I thought that Mari had a thing for Asuka. Maybe she did. Maybe she does. But I thought Mari did. And so when Mari was getting with Shinji at the end, I was like, this doesn't seem correct, but okay. And so they have the watermelon from Kaji. And I like the idea of Kaji and the ship and the arc. So I like the idea of Kaji giving them the wonder and that it's this arc for humanity. I like that concept. I like that Shinji stole the ship. He got them to it before it was finished, and it was their way of storing. They've been storing all the seeds and specimens in it so that they can repopulate the world with them. I like that. That's a cool thematic thing. It's got some like biblical symbolism to it. It's good. And so then they're like, Maya and Ritsuko and Masato are going through here. We get a lot of exposition in this whole thing about how the arc is going to work. And that Kaji was all about survival and preserving humanity post Third Impact. And what would be collateral damage during the Instrumentality Project. I like that they both established in this that they don't want the Instrumentality Project to happen. They want to stop Gendo and stop it from going forward because they don't think that it's necessary. And Masato's like, Kaji gave his life to stop the Third Impact, so we're going to use this ship to annihilate Nerve. I'm like, I like it. It's the arc that was left behind. It was the arc that was used to preserve things left behind, and we're going to use it to protect it. And Ritsuko saying, you sound like a mother. And she says, I have no right to be called that. Okay. And so then, yeah, we get everybody going up there. We're headed to Nerve. Why not? To the remains of the Black Moon and the remains of the Geofront. The resurrection of the Black Moon to be the cornerstone of the Fourth Impact. Feudsky has to watch this disturbing interpretive dance sequence with the Rei clones. He didn't sign up for this. Fuyu-chan didn't ask for this. But here we are. These untainted life forms made with pure souls free of distinction between sex. They still got boobs, though. I mean, if we're being honest, the rebirth of the advanced Ayanami series. Humanity's attempt of self-salvation. Look at where that arrogance has led us. Oh, and it's so creepy. Like, I love the shot of, like, Rei with her eye, and it's super hyper illustrated, and then you see Fuyu-chan behind it. Oh, it's great. It's a great callback of Fuyu and his devotion towards Yui, and where that's led him. Like, his devotion to Yui led him to, like, continue on making all the Reis, even though it's driving him crazy because they're not Yui. Kind of like with Gendo. It's so creepy. I like it though. The visuals and stuff for it are really, really good. And then we cut back to the 13 unit and Gendo. Yep. Gendo's just trying to bring Rei back. That's his whole goal. And so Fuyu basically insinuates that Gendo killed Rei and made her pop so that he could force like Shinji to suffer the same feeling he had when he lost Yui. And I'm like, that's pretty dark and disturbing, Gendo, if that's the case. And he doesn't answer the question. Fuyu-chan asks that. He's like, did you just do this to make your son feel like you did when you lost Yui? And I'm like, that's pretty dark and disturbing. And then we don't get an answer. We cut straight to Shinji holding the tape player. Mm-hmm. And Shinji trying to like... I like that Shinji has this time right now to self-reflect for the tape player and to think about it and be like, am I going to talk to my father or am I not? What am I going to do? Am I going to talk to him? I probably should talk to him. How's that going to work? Okay, and then... like Masato and them are watching over him and decide they're gonna, she's like, should we put the choker on him? And Masato's like, well, atoning for your sins is meaningless if it's not done by your own volition. She's like, us forcing him to atone by wearing the collar would not be atoning. So no, let's not do that. And she's like, besides, it's not like he's getting out. So yeah. I know you're trying to act tough, but you're happy that he's back. And then I like that Risco's like, acting on impulse is not going to do anything but bring you trouble. You know that, right? And she's like, well, being soft on you is going to bring nothing but trouble either. Risco's like, I know that too. And then we get the title card, which granted, we're like an hour in at this point. We're like an hour into the movie at this point. So fair that we get the title card there. So we established that for some reason, their bodies never age, but they grow their hair. And I think it was just an excuse to have Mari, like, trim her hair. God, corruption, and desires dwell within the fibers of hair. Like, what? That's such a crazy thing. I don't know what to think of that. It embodies the chaos of the human mind. Well, mine is pretty much not chaotic, as you can tell. The unequivocal process that you're still human. Isn't it, princess? So I do, apparently Princess is the pet name that Mari had for her. I'm just like, we're over here with our bisexual beings of Shinji and Mari up here, who somehow find happiness with each other at the end. Okay. But then we cut back to, it's just like everything, the rainbow, everything. Here's the crazy thing, right? Is that the stuff that's honestly not needed is, I want to find out a way to phrase this because we obviously have to have a final battle, a climactic battle, but all the extra mech and biblical connections in the battle that get a little bit overboard. We don't need them. I was fully happy with a movie that was dealing with, like, the first hour of this movie, like, we were dealing with these character moments with all of them and what they've been doing, and Shinji realizing he needs to talk to his dad and, like, going through all these thematic things. I could have watched 3 hours of that. And if you had a 1-minute battle at the very end, would have been fine with it. I think I would have been fine with it. It could have been like the OG series, could have taken it, but it gets a little bit ridiculous towards the climax here. And it feels like we've already done this. We've done it in End of Evangelion. We've done it in the last film. So it, like, going over the top even more in this, it almost starts to lose a little bit of the specialness to it, I feel. It loses a little bit of the specialty. And so I really kind of would have rather they'd scaled it back and did something a little bit more low-key. But then it wouldn't have been this epic IMAX battle and stuff. So it's fine. I mean, it's okay. Again, none of the stuff is stuff that I hated. I was like, no, I'm fine with it. It just felt like it wasn't needed. And so, like, the vessels of Adam are ready. And they're going to reactivate the Unit 13. But it's just Gendo and Fuyu-chan. It's nobody else. There's nobody else on the crew of this entire... Who's piloting? There's 4 ships that NERV has. If Gendo's in one of them and Fuyu's in the other, who's piloting the other ships? Are they piloted by dummy systems? How have they been doing all this? Again, Fuyu is 77 years old. I keep going back to that, but I'm like, Fuyu's in his 70s. He's not spry like Ida. Ida's a handyman, but Fuyu can't do it all. I guess Gendo's omnipotence has helped him. Oh my God, though. It's almost funny. It's funny how quiet and empty that NERV is compared to Will. And I guess that's very intentional. It's symbolically supposed to show how they're different and how Will is better because of the community it has. But he says he's going to leave it all to Fuyu-chan. they're like, well, everything's in accordance to Seal. And at this point, I didn't even care about Seal anymore. I'm like, we've dealt with Seal through 26 episodes, End of Evangelion, and 3 rebuilds. The fact the first hour of this film had nothing to do with Seal, I could not have been happier. I was like, I don't need them anymore in this. We've done all that. Let's do something else. And then she's looking at that photo of Shinji. We cut back to Masato, and she's looking at the photo that that they gave her. And we cut back and seeing, and she tells Shinji to go for it. She says, we cut back to that second film. She's like, don't do this for anyone else. Make your own wish come true. And we see, it says to Colonel Katsuragi Masato, Records of Village 3 and Ikari Shinji from Ida Kensuke. And then Ida did the photograph. And Shinji looking so awkward and blushy with Kaiji. That's all the shipper fuel I need. I just needed that photo. Shinji and Kaji. I'm here for it. Let's do this. Ikari and Kaji, let's do this. They're both 14. It's fine. I can handle this. But she sees that picture. Yep. And then get paid. I like that the phones are still kind of old despite it all being so futuristic. And so then, yeah, everything's getting battled. The battle's getting ready. They're getting ready to depart. They're launching everything, getting everything ready. I liked it. I loved the sequence of everybody getting ready for battle. That was like the getting ready sequence. Let me find it here. Everyone getting ready. Everyone gearing up. You had Hyuga like cleaning his glasses and his hair's starting to gray a little bit and he looks older. You have Alba shaving his face, looking all good. It's great. And you had Ida, you had Hyuga and Alba like tying their wraps together around them. I almost shipped Alba and Hyuga there for a second, but then they were like, they did the bro fist pump. And at that point I was like, okay, my BL shipping needs to find a stopping point. I just shipped Shinji with Kaji. Alba and Hyuga can just be buddies. It's fine. But then they're like, you have so many bandages. Chief Takao, so we get a name for him. And he's like, one for each comrade who died when we rose up against Nerve. How many? They were how you identified allies during revolt, weren't they? Okay. Because, yeah, the blue is what we want the sea to return to. I love it. Our wish painted in color, a symbol of our vows. I like it. And then the one that Kaji gave Masato is the one covered in blood. She's like, this bandana has become a memento of Rio. I do love the imagery we get that is what we didn't see from the end of 2.22, and that is of the O1 unit or the Mark 6. Yeah, it's Kaoru's unit grabbing the head of Adam or of Lilith, and all the skulls falling from the sky. Like, all the skulls falling from Lilith. And then you have, like, the Mark 6 unit there. And then Kaji, like, giving her the bandana at the epicenter of it all. And him saying, take care of yourself, Katsuragi. As he apparently flew to his death. I wanted to stay behind with him back then. And then, so apparently he knew she was pregnant, and she told him to go. If you weren't expecting, maybe he would have let you. Okay. And so, yeah, we get that. And then, yeah, we see the two of them. It's great. And so, yeah, we cut that apparently Sakura and Kimikaze were friends. They're roommates. Is it Kimikata? Her name is, like, escaping me. And so we have them, like, being roomies and gearing up for battle. And she's looking at the suit. And they're like, it's our burial clothes. Oh, Mari, that's a way to put it, right? And so, yeah, everybody suits up. And she decides, Asuka's like, I need to make a quick detour. And she's like, okay. Which is funny. Asuka says that she needs to make a detour. But it's Mari that sneaks up from behind Shinji. So that part was like, wait, what are we doing? And she does the same thing. She's like, guess who? And he's like, I'm not sure. And she's like, here's a hint. There's rooftop and glasses. And he's like, a gorgeous girl with big breasts. And he's like, oh, the parachute girl. Bingo. And that's going to be something that gets, reiterated later. I've yet to introduce myself. I'm Mari, Makanami, Mari Illustrious. But then her name is like Mary Iscariot. It's like, what? What? It's a pleasure to meet you again, Will's puppy boy. Again, the whole sniffing thing is kind of weird. And she's like, you smell a bit more mature. It's a little bit weird. I'm not into the sniffing thing. And I like that Asuka's over in the corner being like, he doesn't change that easily. Oh, Asuka. And she's like, do you figure out why I tried to punch you in the face yet? At the end of all things, I need to know before we fly to our deaths, did you figure it out? And then Shinji gives her an answer. He's like, yeah, it's because I never decided on anything when you were in the O3 unit. I couldn't decide whether I wanted to save you or kill you. I didn't decide to help you, and I didn't decide to kill you. I didn't want to take responsibility. Yeah, he comes out and says it. And she's like, I guess you have grown up. Since this is it, I'll tell you something too. You made me lunch once and it was pretty good. And I think I used to have a crush on you back then. But I became an adult before you did. Oh, that line. Oh, she's like, I used to like you, but then I grew up and realized it was just a crush. Which is so crazy because he has to tie back to the original series of when we talked about Asuka and Shinji, just like the two of them. And the reason they were close is because they were both seeking affection, right? And when you're that desperate for affection, it's kind of like Shinji with Kaoru as well. Is it love or is it just that you're starved for affection? And Asuka kind of came to the realization that I was just starved for affection and realized that I only liked you and had a crush on you because I didn't know any better. And now that I've grown up, I get that it was just an infatuation. It wasn't a legit love. But you know what? I will give this. Mari kind of sticks beside Shinji's side in this moment. She like sits there kicking her feet and sits beside him. I guess that's something. I guess she just sticks with him. And she's like, no, you're doing great. You should be proud, Shinji Ikari-san. Ikari Shinji-kun. It's like, hey, she wishes him goodbye. And Shinji's just like, you can see where from Mari's end, why Mari would be totally okay with being in a relationship with Shinji, because she seems to be kind of like, it could happen. But Shinji's just like, up until the very end where he's a changed person, he's just kind of like, he doesn't really show any interest in that sort of thing. And he's like, are you glad you got that off your chest, Asuka? And she's like, yes, it's a real relief. And so then Shinji thinks back to Kaoru. Like he's sitting there on the bunk bed and he thinks about the choker. And that's when he hears Kaoru and he's like, you need to find peace and a place of your own. Fate will guide you there. So this idea that where Shinji ends up at the end of the movie with Mari is where fate was leading him and he had to find this place of peace. And I guess that kind of works with Mari because Mari is something new to him that he doesn't have any history or baggage with. I guess that's why it works because with Asuka, he has all this history and baggage with her. So that's not going to give him peace. Rei brings him back to his mom. That is a lot. And that's not going to bring him peace. Kaoru's dead, but he has all this trauma with. And the end of the film does leave you with a little bit of ambiguity, like maybe he will. Like we see Asuka, Kaoru, and Rei at the train station on the other side of the tracks. Him and Mari don't even get on the train. They run up the stairs away from it. But they're there, so that option is always going to be there. So maybe it will open up a world where Shinji could interact with Kaoru, Rei, and Asuka in the future. We just don't get to see it by the end of the movie. So that's kind of cool. I like that they're at least there and there's that option. And Kaoru said, we'll meet again. And who knows? The shipping, now that I think about it, maybe Shinji and Mari are just like a gay guy and a lesbian and they're just friends. And they're just like, hey, we're just at the train station, we're friends. But then he says you're as cute as ever. So no, I'm going to stick with bisexual king and queen. There, I'm going to stick with that. But yeah, maybe maybe they're together for a while and they don't end up together. Kaoru and Shinji are in the same world together by the end of the film. I'm happy with that. I'm fine with that. It's good. And then yeah, so we prep for this battle and get everything ready, the launch sequence, all this stuff. Everything's going, all systems are go. They're launching everything. Let's go fight Nerve once and for all. And so I'm probably going to skip through a lot of this stuff because, again, it's all just, it's basically the fight and everything. And I do like that they launch the seeds and everything away. They have the credit little missiles. They launch the seeds and all the stuff they've collected over time into the air like satellites, being like, you guys get out of orbit for a while. We got to go battle these Evas and everything. We'll come back for y'all later. Which I'm glad. That means that the seeds and stuff weren't going to get blown up during the operation. So yeah, they basically go to the South Pole where the second impact happened with their flying ship going to take on Nerve, taking on Fuyu-chan and them. And that's when the Evas show up. Like the ships piloted by Fuyu-chan, of course they're like black ships that have the same color scheme as Rei and Kaoru's like suits from this last one. And they say Opfer type integration Erlosung. I'm sure that has a meaning. They've completed it. It's fine. We'll have to indulge in Kari for a little bit longer. So all of this extra mech and talk here in this scene, I kind of was like, I wasn't zoned out, but I was like, it's fine. It's okay. It's not what I've come to like about this movie, but if we're going to have a battle sequence, it's not bad. But God, it's just the logistics of, it's them fighting the ship is one thing. Them fighting Fuyu-chan was one thing. But then there's like, in the L containment, the Eva Infinity Swarm. Why is there an Infinity Swarm? Where did these come from? Where were they made? You know, at least in the original series, like there were a lot of extra Evas, but it seemed like they had been accumulated over a large amount of time. Like there'd been several trial and errors. And then in the end, there weren't that many, like maybe 24. The Infinity Swarm, like where'd all these Evas come from? Where'd all the metal come from to build them? Where are all the resources it took to make this happen? It couldn't have been just Gendo and Fuyu-chan by themselves. So it's just the logistics of it. It is a cool concept to have an entire sea made of Evangelions. It's a cool concept, but it's kind of like, logistically, how does that even work? And then it's fine. But they have the 3 ships, and then they're fighting and doing all of that. Masato being badass. It's great. And then ship number 3 is being used as a shield. And so they've broken through. They've entered this layer that's below the Black Moon. Okay, and they're at the headquarters. And at this point, they're like, not long until Unit 13 reactivates. And they're like, ships 2 and 3 are approaching our stern. And they're like, we need to use the moon as a cover and continue our assault towards the 13 unit. Okay. And so we have all this happen. And then Masato's telling them not to panic, to keep their cool. And they launch all these battleships. Like right into the center of Nerve where the 13 unit is, which is kind of hilarious. I love the idea that these battleships have been used as shields. They've been used as missiles. They've been used as anything but battleships in this whole movie. And it's kind of hilarious. But yeah, so they fire those in there. It's great. And then there's this explosion, but it doesn't stop the 13 unit. Does not destroy it. It's still immobile. And then they start sending out like all of these, like, they have the skulls and they look like Rei from the neck down, but then they have like Eva skulls and they send Mari and Asuka to deal with them. Okay. Saying they're counting on them. And it's just kind of like, it's a little bit of Eva overkill, just a wee bit. Because that was the thing. Like, originally the Eva series, they were special because there was only like 5 of them. So they were these like omnipotent weapons of mass destruction that were maybe gods. And the fact that there were so few of them made them seem rather special. And there were so few angels. But then in this, and then when we got to End of Evangelion, there was the Eva series, which were like 9 of them. And it was like, okay, you've got these evil Evas. It still works because it's still relatively self-contained. And then by the time you get into this movie, there's just infinite Evas. Gazillions. The moment she said gazillions, I was like, gazillions? Really? And then, but yeah, there's just infinite numbers of them. And they just kind of don't seem as special anymore. It just kind of loses a little bit of its charm, right? A little bit of its uniqueness. The fact that now there's like infinite numbers of them. And Asuka and Mari are just plowing through them, right? So there is this big battle. Again, I feel like this battle is something that will look really great on IMAX, would look amazing on screen. But as far as it being used for like, as far as plot-wise, I just kind of like, well, that was really cool. That was fun. And then the moment they all start to make the drill, I was like, are we really? So yeah, the Infinity Swarm was a bit jumping the shark for me. Just a little bit. Because I feel like at some point in a series, you can only do so much. And I feel like this was Eva's point of being like, this is the most we could do. An infinite amount of Ray Evas making a giant drill to attack Asuka and Mari. And they somehow get through it. It felt like it was when like a movie is trying to like be really over the top. And this was that moment. Right? But it's fine. It's okay. And then I do like the idea of Mari and Asuka working together. And they do some kind of weird, funky, geometric Ramiel thing with their AT fields. It's CGI and it's okay, I guess. It's just like, I didn't understand the logistics of it. And it just seemed like a lot of imagery that didn't really have any explanation to it. But it's fine. It's okay. They managed to get through and make it to the 13 unit. And then there's these little, like, annoying, like, jacks. You know, like when you play jacks and there's a ball and the jacks kind of have, like, 4 or 5 sides. That's what these little creepy things look like. And they're just really annoying. Like, even Asuka says, like, these things are just annoying. And they're just trying to keep her from getting to the 13 unit. But then she does. And there's a black Lilith. Why? Why is there a black Lilith? At that point, I was like, what are we doing? What are we doing? It just seemed like a bit of a retread, right? If you just got into the 13 unit and that was it, it would have been fine. But the whole Black Lilith thing is interesting. And of course, I did like the concept of Asuka's Eva unit being scared to attack the 13 unit. I did like that. I liked the idea that an Eva could be scared to attack another Eva. That was a pretty cool concept. I was like, okay, all right, we can work with this. But if I'm being honest, we had this whole thing about Asuka being like part angel. I do like when the entire, like we see the impact, the second impact, like the hole in the earth, and it has like the outline of the angel with like the 4 wings, the 6 wings and everything. That part's really cool. That visual is really neat. I like it. It's like, what do they call it? As it opens up, it's like the crater, the ground zero of it. The ground zero of the second impact Calvary base. Yep. It's the gates of hell open once more. Yep. And they're using it, they're using it just like Seal did to be like this ritual to open things up. It's like, okay. So this is where things get kind of crazy. So they're using it to cause the 4th impact using the same method they did as the second impact, which was the whole thing with the wings. I'm like, okay. And so Masato's like, no matter, we're going to take this for ourselves. And then they're attacked by this 4th ship. And so Asuka kind of, this whole thing where she realizes she can't get through the AT field. I can't afford to not to take care of it now. And right in front of me, but I can't get through. It's right there. And she's like, I need a last resort. And she's like, I'm sorry, new O2. I've got to push you to the limit again. And so she decides to disable the restrictors and do this backdoor code, whatever that is. And she takes off the eye patch. And I'll be honest, it's a little unintentionally funny when she's like rips off the eye patch like she's being super dramatic. I wasn't impressed by it. I was just like, ugh. It was a little like an unintentionally funny moment because she has this eye, right? I do think that it's creepy that she pulls out the like self-containment unit from the eye. It's really creepy. I'm kind of torn how I feel about it because the visual of her ripping out the self-containment unit from her eye is grisly and gross. And I appreciate that. And then I like the concept. That Asuka, when she was contaminated by the angel, it harbored itself within her and she's been trying to like hold that back. I like that. I like that concept a lot. It makes sense with the story, but her releasing it and letting herself become an angel, that she's the ninth angel. That part, and then Mari seems to recognize what's going on. She's lost an arm. She's like, are you going to use the angel's power? And Asuka's apparently is going to. That part, again, it feels less Neon Genesis and more like a battle shonen thing. Because she says she's going to do a full injection, and they inject the blue blood into the Eva unit, right? And it turns her into this monster. That part of the stuff I don't care for, because it's just, that's not Neon Genesis to me. The beast mode, this weird her becoming an animal, it doesn't feel like Evangelion. It just feels like some kind of battle shonen. So I'm not really for Angel Asuka, if I'm being honest. I liked the beginning of it, but her turning into this monster is just kind of like... And then I was kind of like, well, the whole impact is started because an angel comes in contact with Lilith. So aren't you technically... You got onto Shinji so much for starting the third impact and the near fourth, but you were doing the same thing. So I was like, Asuka, what we doing? And then when she's like, you're throwing your humanity away, princess, I'm like, well, yeah, I guess. It's okay. I'm just not a big fan of it. It's not my thing, and it's not what I associate Neon Genesis with, but whatevs. It looks very nice, animation-wise. So there's that. And so then, of course, she realizes, oh, wait, you mean that this Evangelion unit needed me in angel form to cause the third impact? Kind of like what happened with Shinji and Kaoru? What? And then it just kind of rips her apart. And then when Mari's like, so Gendo's goal was to have her turn into an angel? I'm like, well, that's what happened with Kaoru and Shinji, so did y'all not learn your lesson? What are we supposed to do with this? I was like, what are we doing? So yeah, it all just kind of goes to shit. Again, I don't understand. I want to go back where she sees Kaoru on the other side of the angel. Like, she sees Kaoru standing there, and she sees her, a Shikinami type, my original. And then it shows up. So yeah, it's basically her saying the last Eva's form mirrors that of God. All you do is accept me and my love. Which is basically like what Kaoru was telling Shinji when they met. So, again, not on board the clone business. It's kind of like this part here, it's not jumping the shark, but it's just a little too much for me. I'm like, eh. And she tries to swipe her away, and she says, tough luck. And then that girl, the version of her, grabs it and says, how futile, my little idiot. Okay. And then she, grows these wings and takes her away. LCL fluid and all, and sucks her up. Why not? And pulls out the Eva plug to eat it. Okay. So then everything just kind of goes haywire after that. And the one angel that, I guess Rei is inhabiting, starts to corrupt and erode the system and override everything. Wonders reverted to NGH Unit 1 Blube, which is kind of like blue. It's broken through the firewall. The one guy down there is freaking out. And then the system's hijacked. And Shinji's released. And there we go. So then, but the cool thing is Shinji's like, I want to do good this time. I don't want to just walk right in and be used by my father again. I like that Fuyu-chan, we cut back to Fuyu-chan and Gendo, and Fuyu's like, can we wrap this up? Fuyu-chan's like, I've had enough. It's past 8 o'clock. It's time for bed. Can we get this over with and gone? Can we do that? And then the moment Gendo floated in like Kaoru, like an angel, I was like, are you serious? He really is an angel. Okay, it's like, this is what we're doing. An intruder's on the deck bow. And Masato's like, oh my god, it's him. From here on though, and then Shinji's like, what do I know what to do? Okay. She's like, Mari's like, I'm sorry, princess. I'm filled with unbearable shame. Seems I have no choice but to withdraw for now. Okay. Like, she has to leave. And then like the lances come in and destroy the entirety of the entire Geopyramid. But Shinji with the purple eyes is interesting. Like, he's realizing what he has to do. He's got his resolve, I guess. It's not beast mode for Shinji, I don't think. He's not even in an Eva, so I don't know why his eyes are purple. To be honest, like, the stuff leading up to the moment on the deck bow with Gendo, I thought maybe it was a little bit over the top. It wasn't quite my jam. But this deck scene where Ritsuko just shoots him in the face, I was like, yes! It's checking off all the boxes. When he turns around and sees Masato, and she's like, Commander Ikari, and he turns to her, he's like, I compliment you on your efforts, Katsuragi. And he's like, I'll employ this ship as was originally planned. And she just shoots him in the freaking face. I was like, oh my god. I thought it was Masato at first. But then I was like, Ritsuko getting back. I love that it's like Ritsuko's revenge, right? Ritsuko's revenge. Akagi getting revenge on him for shooting her. And she just shoots that visor off his face. It's freaking glorious. He's like, it's you. I just like, oh my god. Oh my gosh, no hesitation when it comes to the goal. She's like, something I learned from you. I'm just like, damn, Akagi. And he just like falls back. But the part that's so creepy is that he just like starts picking up his brain matter off the floor. And like, a god possesses no barriers. They shall simply accept everything that comes their way. And they're like, well, you use the key of Nebuchadnezzar and willingly abandon your humanity. Yep. I appended upon my body information that transcends the word of our realm. There are no concerns. And then, yeah, the Eva head just lands. I shall slay God, intertwine God with humanity, and through the sacrifice of the angels. So basically, Gendo's plan, if we're mapping it out here, I guess I'm going to do it. I do like this scene a lot, so we'll do it in green. But Gendo was basically, he wanted to slay or control God, do the instrumentality project, do the instrumentality by sacrificing the angels. Makes sense. Kind of like what he was trying to do originally. And then do the deification and the instrumentality of mankind. So he's basically wanting to do exactly what he wanted to do in End of Evangelion. Same concept. Same story, just different means. And Masato's like, you're going to throw Asuka's life away to do this? And I was like, he don't care about Asuka. He didn't care about Asuka in any iteration of this series. He's like, the Ayanami and Shikinami type pilots were prepared specifically for this. Which, again, the clone thing, I'm not kind of... If you had told me in the series that he had been grooming Asuka and Rei for this moment, which I guess is what he's saying, I'd be fine with it. But again, I don't think you had to make them clones to get it done. I don't think it was needed. You could have just said you were grooming them for this moment. That's all you needed. But it's fine. The imagery of Gendo with his head hollow and blown apart is so creepy. It's just insane. There are no concerns. He just keeps repeating that same phrase over again. And again, we're just accelerating and causing the same impact that was done in End of Evangelion. Same thing, over again. Same old song and dance, right? And then it's like going into the black hole, seeing the black Lilith, blah, blah, blah. And it's like, this is the commodification of all the ancient life on this planet. Every soul is remolded into a core and assimilated with the Eva infinities. Yeah, it's the start of the fourth impact. And they're just all like little bodies and everything. It's correct. The second impact pure. And so then we had the idea, the second impact purified the seas, making them uninhabitable. Okay. The third impact purified the earth, making it uninhabitable. And then this fourth one shall purify our souls, making us all in a big goop mess. Making us not exist. Cool. And so it's a materialization of a soul. We'll cast aside the vessel known as the seed of man, and our collective intelligence will be guided to an untainted paradise. So yeah, basically it's the instrumentality project like End of Evangelion. Basically, we're doing this whole thing over again. All right. Your father had this theory, and Masato's like, my dad was wrong. It's like, she's like, this is nonsense. I'm going to stop it. And he's like, having tasted the fruits of knowledge, humanity was bestowed with 2 paths. So once they gained knowledge, they could do one of 2 things. They could either be exterminated by the angels that were given the fruit of life, or they could exterminate the angels and rob them of their place. And surrendering our wisdom to enjoy an eternal life as the children of God. He's like, we must decide between these 2 fates. And Nerve's Human Instrumentality Project, the product of Seal, was choosing the latter, and what they employed the atoms for. And we see all this imagery is nothing but a feeble resistance against God. Nevertheless, a worthwhile cause to pursue. And so then I like that Ritsuko is like, no, we're not going to despair to God's will through a hard reset through instrumentality. We're not going to just give up. Like, we've struggled, but we're surviving. Like, no, we'll hope for our own continuation, which is kind of what Fuyu-chan was going for in the original series, right? So Ritsuko's like, nah, we have faith that humanity's wisdom and determination can overcome the power of God. So being like, no matter what happens, we can survive whatever's thrown our way. Which is kind of a cool theme of humanity surviving. That humanity can overcome whatever problem is put in front of them. I like that. I like that Masato and Ritsuko kind of stand up to Gendo in this moment. I like they stand up to Gendo together, because in End of Evangelion, what I liked about this movie in comparison is that in End of Evangelion, Masato kind of dies and Ritsuko dies. They don't get to stand up to Gendo, not really. And Gendo kind of has the last laugh, but then he dies without any redemption himself. So it kind of just becomes this emptiness, right? And I know that's thematic and intentional in End of Evangelion, and it works for End of Evangelion, but this works for this movie, where you have Ritsuko and Masato standing up to Gendo. It feels right, and in the end, Gendo actually gets kind of a happy ending himself. So it's kind of a bizarre antithesis of End of Evangelion, but for what the rebuilds have been, it works for it. So I could see why you would like this, and I could see why those that really love End of Evangelion would probably not like this. So I'm fine with it, though. It's a matter of interpretation of the truth. It's the world you're ignorant of. And Akagi, you're blind to what true happiness looks like. I'm like, Gendo saying that someone's blind to true happiness. Pot calling the kettle black a wee bit. And he's like, human sentiments can't change anything. The horsemen. He's like, the horsemen have assembled. Okay. And then he just like shoots down he just uses his laser vision from his angel eye, his cyclops eye, and gets his Evangelion. He's like, I will now have you return to the EVA Unit 01 that I've lent you. And he just pieces out. And that's when Shinji shows up. And I'm like, hell yeah. I'm like, Shinji shows up. And I love that Masato and Akagi are like, excuse me? But yeah, he shows up. And Gendo walks away. So I love the Gendo and Shinji themes. Just like when Shinji's trying to talk to his dad, he runs away. He doesn't want to open up to Shinji. He like moves to walk away and go to the EVA unit. And he gets eaten by it. Like that's what, it's kind of crazy because what Gendo has wanted this entire time in the entire series, he finally gets. And then Shinji's like, I ain't letting you have this. No. But yeah, he just hops in. Just hops in right in. Just lets him eat it. Lets him get eaten. Carries the O2 unit and just heads up. I'm like, what the hell? Okay. Or rather dives down to the Black Lilith, right? And so yeah, I love that Ida is a damn storm chaser. Like all this stuff, this terrifying imagery is happening where these waves of bodies are crushing up against the barrier of the decontamination unit that Will gave them. And Ida's sitting there with the camera filming it all like, I want to document this. I like that Ida finally gets to document all of his like crazy footage he wanted to back in the past. It's great. But yeah, we get him doing that and he looks so serious and stern. I'm like, I loved Ida in this movie, if you couldn't tell. And then Toji, like we see Hikari's like dad sitting there and he slowly drinks the sake as like the world's crumbling around him. It's so good. He drinks all the sake, and then Toji's sitting there holding on to Hikari and their baby. And he's like, we survived that third impact, and I'm going to have faith in our luck and Masato-san's will. And she's just sitting there crying, holding their daughter, like she doesn't want anything bad to happen to their daughter. I'm like, I never wanted them to succeed in something so badly, because I'm like, with End of Evangelion, everything was like in despair, but it kind of like we spent the entire series with these characters that for a lot of the time were cold and distant from one another, and they started building bonds, and you saw those bonds in action, but they were all still kind of like disjointed and disconnected, and it was kind of just like a horror film watching the impact happen. But here, it felt like there were more stakes with like Toji and Hikari. They have a kid now, like they have that to think about, and Ida, you know, has this whole community. So it felt like the characters were much more tighter knit, and we got to see an actual society and community of well together people that had their shit together socially, getting along. And so it gives you more stakes with not wanting the impact to happen, because you don't want that baby to turn into gloop. So it's like, yeah, it had a little more weight. I really liked that emotional connection you had to it, that you wanted Shinji to be able to stop it from happening, right? It didn't seem as dour as End of Evangelion seemed, I guess. And so Will no longer has the ability to stop the instrumentality project. And this is when Shinji's like, no, I'm going to pilot the EVO 1 unit. Shinji's like, I'm going to do it. He's like, I've ran away all this time. Rei's gone. Asuka's in danger. Kaoru's dead. He's like, I got nothing to lose. I'm going to go stop him. And Shinji gets some balls and some resolve. And Mari, meanwhile, is like, Mari roided out and decided that she's going to just cannibalize all of these EVA units while Shinji's making this decision. Which seems fine. She like eats 4 of them. It's okay. But Shinji has the radio in his pocket, and he tells Masato, he's like, on the way home after Ayanami evaporated, I noticed something Kaji-san showed me, the scent of the earth from his garden. And he's like, I'll help you. I'll take on half the burden. He's like, you don't have to do this alone. And it's like at that point, Shinji grows up and he's like, look, I'll take responsibility with you. I want to do Kaji-san right. Let's save the world. And Masato says, you're going to have to fight Gendo to do that. You know that, right? And I love that shot of Shinji where he's just contemplating. I love that shot of Shinji. Because in that moment, he's like, yeah, I know. But my dad's not been there at all for me, so that's not really the issue. He's like, no, I got to do it now. And I love that shot where he's like, I want to settle the mistakes that I've made. It's like the most mature we've seen Shinji look this entire series, and I absolutely love it. He's like, yeah, no, he's like, I got to take responsibility and do this. And she's like, well, then take this collar and let's go. If you mess it up, we're going to blow you up, right? And he's like, okay. And then Kitakami's like, hold up. Are you joking? You're not actually going to let him pilot, are you? I can't believe that Sakura shot Masato. I can't believe it. She's like, you told us we could shoot him unconditionally in this situation, right? But Kitakami can't do it. And Shinji's like, go ahead and shoot. Fine. He's like, I know I caused the third impact. I'm taking responsibility for it. She's like, this is you and Gendo's fault. And she's like, I can't forgive you. And she shoots, but she hits their feet. And that's when, well, no, actually Sakura shot first. And Sakura's like, I won't let you pilot the EVA. You did it and ruined our lives. And you ruined your own. She's like, I'm not going to let you do that again. It's a great showdown. And Shinji's like, I'm sorry. But please let me pilot it. God, it's a great showdown. I love it. You won't do it again if you get injured. This is going to hurt, but it's better than you having to pilot. So she was not going to kill him. So Sakura was just going to shoot him so he'd be immobilized and he wouldn't be able to pilot the Eva. Okay. So that's something. Just put up with it. And that's when Masato gets hit instead. And the glasses fall off. And I love that Kagi like screams after her. And she's like, oh, it's okay. 'Tis a flesh wound. If you hadn't piloted that O1 unit 14 years ago, we would have been wiped out back then. So she's like, you know what? If you hadn't done it back then, we would have died anyway. So it would have, she's like, I'm grateful for you for trying. Even though the near third happened as a consequence, I take full responsibility for your actions at the time. She's like, I pushed you to do it then, and it's not entirely your fault that things went down. There was a lot of factors. There was a lot of stuff going on. As Toji would say, a lot of stuff happened. So yeah, I like this moment on the bridge where they all kind of come to terms with everything and taking responsibility, and Shinji has resolve. It's kind of crazy. And she's like, I still have... And I love that callback where she's like, I still have custody of a Shinji Ikari, where Masato has custody. I feel like Masato's death in this, it does feel earned because she kind of comes to grips with her feelings for Shinji. She has the photo. We see her with the photo back then of her son and Shinji. We see her going through the motions. We see her talking with Akagi about it. It feels earned. And it feels like it was set up. And so her taking the bullet and calling back to her being, you know, the guardian of Shinji, and then her sacrificing herself on the bridge, going down with the ship as the captain. It all ties together. And I like that they made it to where Kaji didn't know that she was his mom, so that he can still live on and not be sad or burdened by it. Because I think Masato always knew that the line of duty she was in, he was going to be in danger if he knew about her lifestyle, or he'd be like her and try to follow her, and then he'd be put in danger, and that's the last thing that she wants. So I like that she gave him his freedom by just not being there at all, right? She doesn't abandon him like Gendo does Shinji, but she just puts him in good hands and says, okay, y'all take care of him. I'm off to, you know, fight the apocalypse. It's great. But yeah. And then, like, we all owe Ikari for saving us. But we lost so many people in the near third, like my dad. And she's like, Ikari-san may have saved us, but he destroyed us too. And that's such a hard thing to deal with, because yeah, it's like Shinji saved you and he ruined everything. So it's like, it's the worst paradox, right? What a conundrum. We've got no choice. And she just keeps shooting the ground. And then Kitakami stops her and says, let's just focus on living for right now. It's all we can do. Now again, did we have to have a butt shot of her as she falls to the ground? We did not. We did not have to have that fan service, but they did it anyway. And I don't know, I guess it's because I've seen so much like sexualization like that in media that it bugs me. But I'm like, we could have seen her like collapse from the front of her. Why'd we have to see her ass? That's beyond things. It's just me being nitpicky. And then Mari shows up and she's like, so's folks. She's like, sup? She's lost her arm. She's like, the prep work took longer than I needed. Let's go, puppy dog. And so yeah, she actually does kind of interact with Shinji in this. And Ritsuko's like, okay, Maya, bring the plug suit. And they nab it. And then Masato's getting healed up. I like Masato's black suit look. It's great. I like it. She looks more like herself. And Shinji telling her, she's like, Shinji-kun, the only thing a son can do... This line! The only thing a son can do for his father is pat him on the shoulder or kill him. What an extreme. What a line. Damn. But she says that's what Kaji said. Kaji's words. And Shinji's like, I met Kaji Ryuji, you know. She's like, was he doing well? He's like, yes. She's like, great, I'm glad to know that. She said, he's such a nice guy. We didn't talk for too long, but I like him. And Masato's like, well, good for you, Shinji. Rooting for you. Oh, and then she gives him a damn hug! I'll do whatever I can to support you. Oh, I missed that in the reaction. That they hugged each other. Aw, man. I'm going now, Masato-san. Oh, it's so good. And then he goes with Mari. Okay. All right. And so they go and head up that way to go find to go down. And she's like, we gotta get back to work. And so Mari tries to explain everything that's going on. And so there's this anti-universe that they have to go into. And the anti-universe is kind of like the epicenter of End of Evangelion, where you basically have the power of a god to control whatever happens. And she's like, that's what we're aiming for, because that's where Gendo's going. We've got to stop him from causing the instrumentality. Our job is to destroy the 13 unit before everybody gets coreized. I do think that with the shipping of Shinji and Mari, the only thing that kind of makes me like about it is that she calls him puppy dog. Like, that's like a pet name that I'd be like, ugh. I wouldn't want somebody calling me a puppy dog. It'd be kind of like, eh. But I do like that she's like, that's the only way to turn things around. And he's like, I get it. And so she's like, you can't underestimate him. He's taking advantage of the anti-universe and keeps teleporting. It won't make catching him easy. And he's like, it'll be okay, Mari-san. I'm going to go right now. Okay. Like, he seems like, she's like, there's a chance the princess's soul is still inside there. So I like that Mari's like, hey, while you're in there, grab Asuka. If you think about it. And then he's like, okay. And she's like, please, Asuka needs your help. And he's like, I'll try. It's like, I make no guarantees. And then he goes to where the O1 unit is because he assumes Ayanami's in there. And Mari's like, wherever you go, I'll come to get you. Just wait for me, Shinji-kun. I'm like, I guess that's interaction between the two of them. I guess it's something. All right. Okay. And he's like, thank you. Okay, it's something. It's a start. I'll wait. And she does come and get him at the train station, so... And she says, good luck. And then, of course, Gendo is there asking if Ray's fine with this. Ray with the long hair is so wild. Like, I don't know how to feel about that. Ray with the long hair is just kind of like, it looks so weird. And he's like, Ayanami. And that's when Shinji shows up. And he's like, I'm sorry. I wanted to make it so you wouldn't have to pilot the Eva again, but I failed. And he's like, it's okay. So she didn't want him to have to pilot again. And he's like, I'll take it from here. And so, yeah, she's kind of just like a spirit at this point, right? And then he takes over. And, like, gets away from Gendo. And the fact that he, like, chokes out Gendo, I'm like, oh my gosh. And so the pilot of the O1 unit has awakened. And so somehow they get a transmission from the anti-universe. It's fine. So the sync rate is at 0. And so, yeah, this part about the sync rate being infinite is a little jumpy to Sharky for me, where the sync rate is infinite. That part was a little hokey for me. I was like, you could have just said it was like, I don't know, that something was wrong with the system and it just bounced back to 100 or something like that. You could have done that, but whatever. I can't stop it. And so then, yeah, if you had told me, like, again, back at the end of the season, I was like, when I started the series, I remember saying that I was like, I honestly thought that the series would end with, like, Gendo fighting Shinji or something. Like, wouldn't that be funny if Gendo was fighting Shinji in 2 Evangelions? Wouldn't that be something? And then by the time we got to episode 25 and 26, I was like, well, I'm clearly joking. I'm not joking now! They're like duking it out at the end. What the hell? And of course they fight with Cassius and Longinus. And he's like, I have deeds to fulfill. And they just literally duke it out. It's kind of insane. And I like the Kikari's like, what are they trying to do? Have another impact caused? And then Gendo just being like, they go down to this place where beings who are not human left behind the world of God in this place. The 6 spears with the atoms. Okay. And there's like all this jargon thrown out at us, which at this point I was like, it's fine. I'm sure it's all, he's like, my wife, your mother was here as well. This is the promised land where everything began. There are certain things out of man's control. This is the one and only place that fate can be bent to one's will. So it's kind of like the center of the End of Evangelion moment where this is the place where if you're going to change fate and decide if we're all going to become gloop or not, this is where that happens. And so, I will be honest though, what I loved about this scene was that we go back to the beginning where he's like, your senses are incapable of being perceived by the anti-universe. So this is your memories. The LCL has formed a virtual environment that we are able to comprehend. So it's just like a VR room, and it's like we're just going through the motions and showing you images of things to see, like a flashback. And what I love about this whole fight scene with Gendo, where they fight in different rooms and different places, it is so Evangelion. Like, this is the stuff, like all that stuff with like the sync rate infinite, like the infinity Evas, like all that stuff, that doesn't feel like Evangelion to me. That's just like fanfic. The fact that they're fighting in Masato's apartment as Gendo and Shinji in the Evangelion units, that ain't fanfic. That's straight up OG. That is so good and hilarious and wonderful, and I love it so much. Gendo standing on top like Kaoru, like just being like, "Sup, son?" Like, just, waiting for him, like standing there like Kaoru, kind of, right? Oh my god. We'll have to take the long way around then. The long way around, the two of them fighting, freaking loved it. I loved this moment. Okay, there is a lot of CGI in this moment, and I will be honest, the CGI of the Gendo and Shinji battle, and then Rei's CGI face, absolutely not. I could tolerate the CGI battle stuff because I'm like, it's okay. It's fine. You put all of your budget into Ida. Cool. But the CGI, like, realistic Rei face where it looks like an actual person and they just CGI'd the hair and the eye color onto, it's not just creepy. It's like Uncanny Valley, and it doesn't feel good. I could not do that. I was like, nope. But them just battling in different areas, oh my god, I loved it. It was great. They just move from area to area. And god, this shot of like Gendo eating Shinji and like all of them like moving around. He's like, just stop it, Dad. And they move from spot to spot. It's absolutely hilarious. Like, they're like moving to the beach. He's like, it's so good. And like just attacking each other. And they move through the spot where Kaoru was. Where Kaoru and Shinji was, that same spot. And of course there's a rainbow. Why wouldn't there be? And then he sees the place with the piano. And like the water landing on the keys. Like, god, the animation. I can forgive the CGI budget in the prior scene because the scene here is just freaking gorgeous. And then, yeah, they keep on fighting and Shinji doesn't want to stop until he's talked to his dad. And he's like, you still don't understand. Oh my gosh, and just tosses him around. And yeah, they battle it out. And Shinji getting mad, because I like that Shinji gets mad here because he sees they're destroying the place where the village was. He's like, we're not just fighting between you and me. We're fighting for the sake of all these people and their survival. To say that nothing of the fact that violence and fear are not criteria that our conflict can be resolved. But Shinji doesn't give up. And he sees like all the destruction of like what would be like the homes of Toji and everyone else. And then he sees like all those moments with them. And he just puts the spear down. I love he puts the spear down and stares looking at his father. And he says, that's right, this isn't something that can be resolved through strength. We're going to have a talk no jutsu. He's like, no, we can't just resolve this fighting. He's like, what is this doing us? We're just fighting endlessly. Nothing's happening, right? He's like, I want to talk to you, Father. And it cuts to them in the room talking with each other with that distance. So the idea that they shouldn't be fighting, they need to be talking instead. He's like, no. He's like, I want to talk with you, Father. He's like, I'm tired of fighting and running away from you. No. And it's like he's like, what are you doing here? What are you even trying to do? He's like, I have this Golgotha object and the additional impact. He's like, I need to pave a way in which I can slay God. And Shinji's like, no, but what are you doing? He's like, in the end, I've delivered 2 spears onto this land. He's like, I have a feeling the Magi copy predicts a high likelihood that he's going to try. So meanwhile, Masato and them predict that Gendo is going to try to destroy the spears so that the impact can't be stopped. The stuff with the spear that they make, it's, kind of some mumbo jumbo, but you know what? Why not? At this point, I was like, I wanted to get back to Gendo and Shinji talking, and I was like, if you guys are going to explain this through all your jargon and trying to make it all make sense, why not? You go for it. If that's how we get from point A to point B, sure. I just wanted to get back to Gendo and Shinji talking because I'm like, we've waited 26 episodes and an entire series of movies for Gendo and Shinji to have a legit father-son conversation. And that's the kind of stuff that I'm here for with Neon Genesis. I'm like, you can give me all these battles and whatnot, but I'm here for like this father and son to have a legit conversation. And so, yeah, the Bouble, it's the AA Wonder, and it was by Will instead of Nerve. Okay. All right. And so Ritsuko, she's like, I'm taking over the ship in case something happens to you. And so, yeah, they tap into the spinal cord of this ship, and there's blood everywhere, and they're, like, using it to build this extra spear. And then he takes him to Black Lilith. I thought Black Lilith happened, like, a while ago. But instead, I don't know why there's a Black Lilith. Again, why the extra spear? Why is there a Black Lilith? Sure, why not? At this point. He's like, your memory leads you to see it as such. This is Evangelion imaginary. So it's like a Heartless, kind of. It predicted its existence. It should not exist in this world. It's an imaginary Eva. Okay. Only humanity with its ability to believe equally in both fantasy and reality can perceive it. Now that's kind of cool. That is kind of cool, that the fact that he touches on humanity equally believing, and Whiteboard Coon's out of space. So at this point, and I still have things I want to write. But at this point, he's talking about like humans are the only beings capable of blending fantasy and reality so they could perceive this imaginary Eva. That's fine. I kind of like that concept. That's pretty cool. It's neat. But yeah, then you have all the spears, like the spears of despair and hope become each other's sacrifice and they trigger it. Sure, reality and imaginary blend together. So everything becomes homogenized information and it becomes this Lilith that detaches itself, kind of like what we've seen in the series. Our understanding, the entire world shall be rewritten. Okay. And that's the trigger for the impact. All right. Sure thing. And then it becomes the giant, like, ray head. And Shinji's just looking at Gendo like, why are we here? Why are we doing this? And I love Shinji just being like, Dad, what we doing? This is the only means by which my wish can be granted. And then we see the giant ray head that's really creepy. I don't like it. It's disturbing. It looks weird and gross. I'm with Kitakami. I really thought that when it like looked at her with the eye that she was gonna like turn into gloop or something. Her face saying this is completely insane is kind of like at this point in the movie where we're all at. But yeah, then okay. I could deal with Rei having the photorealistic face. That part was okay. But the mannequin Evas, why? It just was so bizarre. Like, I liked the concept of the Wanderers. I liked the concept of the headless Evas that walked around being creepy. I thought that was kind of cool enough. But when they made them into mannequins, they kind of became unintentionally funny. And I was just like, oh, because there's no head on them, right? If you had a bunch of like nude Rays rocking around with like her head and her blank doll eye stare, that would have been creepy. And I would genuinely would have been like, ugh, what? But the fact that they all are like little mannequins that you'd see in like a Kmart is just the most bizarre thing to me. I'm like, no, why? And they're all CGI, so they all have this autonomous like samey look to them, so they're not creepy at all. It's just kind of funny. I was not having it. But I wanted to keep going back to Gendo and Shinji's conversation, and they all fly up, and Fuyuchan's like, am I done? Fuyu's like, are we done with me? Can I be done with this movie? I'm not done much, but are we okay to go? And then this part where Mari shows up. And he's like, oh, it's you. And she says, it's been quite some time, Professor Fuyutsuki. The L containment field density is a little too high in here. This ship was never designed to be manned, and I realize I'm being reckless. So he knew he was about to become gloop. The ray of light called hope shines eternally upon humanity. But hope is similarly what we'll call a sickness, which they cling on and drown themselves in. So it's like, yeah, you need hope. People need hope to carry on, but if you rely too much upon something, you can drown in it. I kind of like that. That's cool. But so, he's like, both Akari and I are guilty of clinging on it for far too long. Like, we didn't know when to let it go, right? When to move on to something else. Clearly. As Gendo is trying to fulfill his wish by becoming the center of instrumentality. And so I can sympathize with how you want to help him or how your wish overlaps with his. Yeah, she calls him out. She's like, I can see why you would want to do that. I'd prefer you not drag the whole of humanity down with you, you know? I kind of like Mari there. She's like, I get it. I get what you're after, that you're kind of into Yui too, but you know, if you could not destroy all of humanity, that'd be great. I love it. She's like, that'd be great if you can do that. He's like, my role here is done. Fuyu's like, I ain't done much in this movie, but I'm done. I've assembled the things you wanted. Do your best as you see fit from here. So I'm kind of like Mary of Iscariot, which I know is like a biblical reference. But she's just like, okay. It's been a long time since I've heard that name. I'm like, who are you? And she's like, fine, this is farewell. And then he looks back at the photo, right? He looks back at the picture, and she's like, but she's in it, isn't she? And he's like, Yui-kun, this'll do, won't it? So, okay, again, I'm okay with this. But one thing is, like, if Mari was really, really around when Yui and Gendo was around, and she just didn't age, and she's actually, like, in her 50s, I guess it doesn't matter when Shinji rewrites everything because history's rewritten and Kaoru's no longer like centuries old. He's the same age as Rei and all them. I guess when Shinji rewrites the future or rewrites the story, it's okay. But it's still a little weird if she's been like really old this whole time. But I guess when he rewrites the story, it's okay. I will say though, all of the mannequins like holding hands and flying through the air is a little bit unintentionally funny. It just, because it's CGI, it looks humorous and unintentionally humorous. I think if it had been hand-drawn, it would have been much creepier. But here, it just looks like something I would see in spy movie. You know, in spy games. It looks like something I would see in spy games. The animation style of it. It's sad because the rest of the animation in this movie is freaking gorgeous. But this one scene here, I'm like, oof, they dropped the ball a wee bit. A wee bit. It's creepy. It's just, and it's all white, which I think doesn't help either. So, but anyway, they're in the process of building this lance. And Mari, she's like, well, let's do this. She's like, I'll just keep eating these Evas like you do. And so meanwhile, everybody straps in and Masato leaves them and stays on the ship. And I do love when Masato lets her hair down and she looks like herself again. She's like the good old times. Yeah, girl. I do like Masato gets back to her old self at the very end of things. That's really good. So yeah, all the ships. Mari sinks all the ships. And then she's like, she sees the ships on the move. She says she needs to catch up with them. She's like, the physical and mental instrumentality of mankind at the same time. Well, Gendo, what is it that you want? That you wish for? I like that Shinji finishes the sentence. What do you wish for, father? And he says, a world that you refused. A world where there are no AT fields. And Gendo kind of goes over, like, why he wants this. He's like, where everyone is equal and we share a single human mind. Because at the time of End of Evangelion, I was like, well, if we all share a human mind, we're together, but we're still alone. Well, That's what Gendo wants. Gendo doesn't like other people. He doesn't want to talk to other people. He wants them all to just be one human mind, and he doesn't have to communicate with them. He doesn't have to break down any barriers. He just doesn't have to worry about it. It solves all of his problems. And I'm like, oh, that makes much more sense of why Gendo's doing it. He's like, there's no individuality. There's no rich, no poor, no discrimination. But all that stuff is superfluous because he just wants to be alone. And he's like, and it's a restful world where I can be with Yui once more. And oh my God. Okay. So a couple things. Maybe my favorite sequence in this, one of my favorite sequences in this whole movie, maybe of all of Neon Genesis, is just Gendo's story. When Gendo is screaming Yui's name at her every time he sees Rei, that scene, oh my God, like that's incredible, because it's like we've never seen Gendo show any emotionality at all in this series, none whatsoever, and he just is screaming her name every time he sees her, like all the time. And he sees her like in the bedroom, he sees Rei in the hallway, sees her in the bed there, sees her outside. He's like, where are you, Yui? And all he sees instead is Rei. And it drives him crazy. And he's like, where'd you go? It's just, you see the madness in this man. You see how he really genuinely loved this one woman. He hated everybody else, but he fell in love with her. And she understood him and had compassion for him and loved him in return. And then he lost her. And he just went crazy. And just all those creations of Rei, oh, it gives, like, him screaming her name. And Shinji's like, you have to stop this. Like, he's like, why are you here, Shinji? And he's like, I want to learn about you. He's like, I'm following Rei's advice. I'm following Ida's advice. I want to learn about who you are. He's like, I always tried to stay away from you. And even when I didn't want to be alone, I was scared that I'd find out you hated me. So yeah, it's just like, finally talk it out. He's like, but I need to understand who you are in order to move forward, to know you. And he moves towards Gendo. Like, he moves towards him, and Gendo opens up the field. Like, Gendo, it's hilarious because Gendo says he doesn't want a world with AT fields. He wants a world without them. But as soon as Shinji gets close to him, he puts it up like, no. It's so good. He's like, even though I abandoned my humanity, it's still there? Yeah. And he's like, I'm still afraid of Shinji. And it's like, yeah, you are. And Shinji just like, he's like, this wasn't something that was meant to be thrown away. Like, that barrier is there to protect you, but you can also let it down if you want to. But it's meant to be there for a reason. It was meant to be given back to you, wasn't it? And he gives him back the tape player. I love this scene. This scene is so good. Where they're on the train together. They're actually on the train, and it's just, it's so OG, the Gendo train scene. Gendo and Shinji on the train. And trains are like throughout this entire film. There's so many trains. It's great. But the Gendo on the train scene, it's like all this, I've wanted this entire series to have Gendo point of view, to get the story from Gendo's perspective, to get explanation. And this movie was like, you know what? It's the very end. It's the final 20 minutes. Let's go for it. And I'm like, yes, thank you. He's like, you were just like me. He's like, yes, I was. My headphones cut me off from the outside world. And we go into this exploration where we start with track 1. I love it. We start with track 1. They protected me from the noise and helped me to feign indifference. And to just block everyone out. And he's like, but when I met Yui, I didn't need them any longer. Because I had her. And then it stops. And then we see, have you decide on a name? If it's a boy, Shinji. If it's a girl, we'll go with Rei. And then we see him with her, like, as she's about to have, like, her baby. And then we hear Shinji crying. And then Gendo, like, has a moment where he's like, I never knew my parents' love, and yet I became a parent. And is that Mari there in the wings watching? I'm a little worried if Mari's been there the whole time. If Mari was there when Shinji was born, I'm a little concerned. Maybe it's Mari's mom. Maybe it's Mari's mom. We'll just go with that. But he's like, yet I became a parent myself. There's no question this world is unstable, imperfect, and irrational. And I love that we just get the shot of Gendo against the sunset with the glasses, and he's young himself. Like, he's a young man. Like, he looks like he's in his early... He looks younger in Shinji in the flashback, right? Even though we know he's older when Shinji was born. It's a world where things break down if you take what people say at face value. People will say different things at different times. Like, he just couldn't take it. He wasn't adept at living. He doesn't know what the truth is, and he doesn't know what he's supposed to go along with. He's just like Shinji. He's like, maybe both were the truth. But I love this idea of him on the track. And then maybe the differences came from how they felt at the time. And I love that everyone's running one direction and Gendo's walking the other direction. Oh, it's great. And I love that these are all like sketches, like Anno's actual sketches. I hated this world brimming with people. And we see like him being like as a kid sitting alone in the shadows reading, but everyone else is shadowed, but he's in the light. The animation here is beautiful. So I never felt loneliness. That image of him reading with the glasses and he's looking up and he looks like a grizzled old man. He's like, I never felt loneliness because he never connected with anyone. Because the idea is that you don't feel loneliness until you connect with someone and then they're not there. Because loneliness is the absence of someone. And if you're never around someone, you don't feel it. But he claims that that was never a case. And so he was just able to survive. But there are some in the world who frown upon such a life. And we see him meeting Fuyu-chan. And Fuyu-chan's like, nah, you don't need to be by yourself. You need to move on. He's like, I disliked visiting other people. I didn't want to see their classmates. I didn't want to care for them, go to their relative's house. And we see him in the corner, like at a family gathering. He's off in the corner reading. He didn't want to communicate with any of them. He was like, I was forced to confront the circumstances of their lives and made to partake in them. Being with other people was excruciating. And we see like him in the spotlight alone. I just wanted to be alone. But he said there was two things that I liked. The first was knowledge. I satiated my starving heart through the intake of information on my own terms. It was something he could control, right? He could control what he learned and when he learned it, right? Knowledge does not ask for concern. So all those times he said there are no concerns, it was him being like, knowledge doesn't ask for concerns. It doesn't have emotions. It's objective. It's just information, right? I could serve upon myself as much knowledge as time would allow me. The other was the piano, which explains why there was the piano there, and it ties back to Kaoru. Oh my God. I love, and the animation where it's a finely tuned sound would answer correctly to the key when it was touched. I love it. And we get the shot of him playing the piano. Oh my God. There's no deception there, no betrayal nor disappointment. It does what it's supposed to do. I would be solely translated into the stream of sound. I liked this system. And we see him like with the, I liked being alone. And we see him with the headset and everything. And then we see this girl here who looks like Mari. It meant neither I nor anyone else would get hurt. So again, I'm like, is Mari the one that's been around Gendo this whole time that's now a Shinji? I don't know. But it meant that neither of us would get hurt if I was by myself. And she's like, alone, I could be at ease. I think it is Mari, because Fuyu-chan is there and they meet Gendo and they meet Yui. So, okay. I don't know how I feel about this ship now. I don't know how I feel about that, because if Mari's been there the whole time, that's creepy. Never mind. And that's when he met Yui. But after I met Yui, he fell in love. I learned that living could be an enjoyable experience. And Mari's like teasing him, right? I learned that living could be this enjoyable experience. And he sees Yui across the room. Yui accepted me for who I was. And I love that we actually get to see like them together. Like him and her like embracing. Like it shows his hand reaching over and her like grabbing the hand. I love that. Like them next to each other. When I lost her, with her went the faith I had in my ability to live on my own. I was like, oh my God. It just like, all of that. Where the image of him like against the desk for the first time, I knew the anguish of loneliness. It's so good. It's like you waited this whole time. You waited the whole series to see Gendo's backstory, and it's so worth it. It's so worth it. I was like, it all makes sense. It's great. Oh my God. And so I couldn't handle the pain of losing her. And so he created the rays. I just wanted to cry against her chest. But I wanted to change myself by being at her side. And so, yeah, but he couldn't. It wasn't, he kept looking back at oh my God, the image. I just wanted to make that wish come true. The image of like all the rays collapsed in the tanks and Fuyu standing there and he's looking at the picture of his wife and his son in his hands. Anno! You genius! You madman! It took you so many years to get here. And then we see Gendo his head in his hands. Am I unable to reunite with her because of how weak I am? He does get to be with her at the end, though. And the phone is, like, shattered. Oh. And he says, Shinji. And then we see the baby Shinji. He's like, I think it's because you're in denial about being weak. And then, oh my God, we see, like, young Gendo there, right? You've always known that, though, haven't you? We see the young version of him. And he looks like Shinji a bit, right? His face is a little bit different, though. His hair is the same, but his face is a little bit different. Like, Shinji's face is more narrow, like Yui's. But he does look similar there. God, I love that. Oh, it's so good. See the fan there? He's like, what is that? It's Masato-san. Yeah, you see the difference between them. Oh, I just love it so much. And she's like trying to burst through Ray's hands to get to the center, the epicenter of it all. I'm not done yet. She's like, I gotta get this spear to Shinji. I gotta do it. Oh my gosh. Again, the CGI head is so creepy and it doesn't go well with the 2D hair, but what can we do? But yeah, they take the spine and they make it into they convert it into a spear. Why not? Okay. Sure. He's like, ludicrous! The holy spears have all been lost! Like, oh, well, you know, it's the power of plot contrivance, baby. And so there aren't supposed to be any more. We had the spear of Cassius for hope, Longinus despair, but even after we lose both, the way they've turned the world to the way it was has created another of Gaius, which is the spear of will, which is knowledge and willpower. Okay. Why not? And so Yui-san, okay. Again, now that I'm looking at it and thinking about it, if Mari's been there the whole time, I don't know how I feel about her and Shinji being together at the end. That might be a little bit creepy. Perhaps. But Kaoru is at the very end together with all of them, so my headcanon is that Mari and Shinji are just friends, and that him and Kaoru or him and Kachi get together at the end. I'm totally fine with that. I can deal. And Asuka's with Ida. Can do it. And so, yeah, she gets the spear and gets it to Shinji at the cost of her own life. And he's like, thank you, Masato-san. He's like, you're able to accept the feelings and deaths of other people. You've become an adult. It's like, I feel like that was our congratulations moment for Shinji. I feel like that was Gendo's clapping moment. He's like, you've learned to accept the death of other people and their responsibilities. And it's like, I feel like Gendo's congratulations moment to Shinji. That's what it feels like. It feels like the end of episode 26. Oh my God. And then we see them together at this table of junk, of everything sitting next to one another. Like, and I feel like this was a flashback of them before, until the very end. I had no idea that it would prove to be a necessary material in Yui's reconstruction. And we see like young Shinji looking like just so miserable with his father, and his father not looking at him, like from the past of them together. Fulfilling a wish entails a sacrifice. I felt that a child was a punishment upon myself. Not seeing my child, not being there for him, I thought that would be my redemption. So he's like, if I just abandon my kid, that'll be my punishment. I thought that would be what would be best for him. But then God, when Shinji's sitting there crying and Gendo looks back, he looked back! Still gets me. God, I love this scene so much. And yeah, seeing her with him. And then he goes back and gives him a hug! Gendo giving Shinji a hug in that moment. When he's about to leave him on the train. Oh! That's my dog, like, freaks out. He's saying, I'm sorry, Shinji. Oh, I see. Oh. Huckleberry! Were you there the whole time, Yui? She was with his son, and he just didn't realize it. And then he gets off the train. I love that the door kind of stops there for a second. And then he gets off the train. Oh, damn. And so then Kaoru's there. Kaoru's like, hey, what's up? Kaoru's like, did you miss me? He's like, he was the center of instrumentality this whole time. The origin of the cycle. I'll take over from here. Kaoru's like, hey, it's just your spiritual quest, buddy. Right over here. It's fine. He's like, what is it that you wish for? You're here on the train, the special train wish. And Shinji's like, it's okay. He's like, I can handle any pain that I have to go through. He's like, it's fine. I don't need to have a special wish. I'm more worried about saving Asuka and the others now, though. And I love that they just Kaoru clanging down on the piano, being like, your wish is my command, Shinji-kun. You've already been able to stand back up in reality, not just in the imaginary. He's like, I have to pay for the mistakes that my father has made. And I love that it's like, and he's like, Asuka, and he like calls to her, and she's been like in the tank. And she's in like all the tanks too, like she's being used like Rei was being used, right? Calling like to her original state. Okay. He's calling back through all the clones to her original one. Okay. I do like that at times the scenery becomes a set, kind of like it was in episode 25 and 26. That part was cool. And so in this version, Asuka does not know her parents. She doesn't know her mother or her father. She just says, oh, you don't need anybody, Asuka. And she sees the puppet again. But we see her out in the woods, right? I like the metaphor of the woods, of her being lost out there and not knowing how to find her way back. And so then we say terminated all of the different Asuka types. We see her in the gymnastics all alone. I like the visuals here too. She's in the gymnasium all alone. It's going to be too hard on me because living is painful. Candidate has failed to meet established performance requirements. Thorough assessment of subject's condition and circumstances has concluded that any probability of recovery or regaining prerequisites to be minimal. Research resources have been reallocated. The decision is final. Okay, so she didn't meet the requirements that Nerve wanted. Okay. And then it shows her like practicing that she's going to pilot her Eva. Okay. And it shows her in like German doing all the simulations, right? Okay. Even if people hate me, even if they say I'm good for nothing, it doesn't matter as long as I can pilot. And it shows her as being a kid. She's like, it's the only thing I'm worth after all. I do like seeing this, like seeing her in Germany, like on the property training and seeing her like going through the motions with it, like in the imagery of the gymnasium and everything and her practicing. That part's awesome. I love it. And her like running, I'll build up a strong heart and mind so I never need anyone else. So, praise me, recognize me. And tying back to all those typical things with Asuka, give me somewhere I belong. And she even has the little monkey keychain that she had back in episode 22. The truth is that I'm lonely. And it shows her, and there's like all the Nerve people there, and she's like the Eva child, like the pilot. And then we see Gendo like helping Yui up, and she has Shinji. And I love that Shinji's just sitting there like batting against Gendo, like hates him. Hilarious. Like that is so funny. And then Yui, the moment she takes him, he instantly calms down. And Gendo's like, oh my god, really? Like young Gendo. And Shinji immediately is calmed when his mama's there. What a mama's boy. Mm-hmm. But Asuka didn't have that. In this version, she doesn't have any parents. All I wanted was for someone to pat me on my head. But But then we see this giant doll, like this person in this giant doll costume. And she's crying and then sees it. Right? And then it sits next to her and pats her on the head. And then when it takes the head off, it's Ida. It's all right. You're you, Asuka. That's enough. And see, that's the thing. I think in that moment, it's blending 3 different things. It's blending the doll that she had that was her only friend in her childhood, the doll being grown up, being an adult sitting next to her and giving her the head pats and telling her that she's fine the way she is, like she always wanted to hear, to praise her and recognize her and give her a place she belongs. And then the doll reveals itself that it's not been the doll and imaginary the whole time, but it's been Ida. Ida gave her the place to belong and praised her and recognized her. And I'm kind of all about it. I love it. And then it shows her on the shore there, right? Next to Shinji. Shows her on the shore next to Shinji, and everything's all right. He's like, was I asleep? And then here's the thing. I'm just going to say, he's glad that he could see her again. I just had something I wanted to tell you. Thanks for telling me that you liked me. He says, I liked you too. And then, of course, she blushes. And she's like, eh. Okay, but... why? I don't know. I just, if there's going to be somebody in the comments that's like, well, Asuka was in that skin-tight, really glossy suit that was ripped off around her boobs and everything because... And I'm going to be like, no! That's total fan service. There is no reason for it. None whatsoever. It is just fan service so some guy can have a pervy pillowcase about it. That's literally it. Or girl. Maybe a girl has a pervy pillowcase about it, but regardless, that's the only reason it exists. And you know what? I realize now, seeing this image, I went to an anime convention back in August, which was like 3 months ago, and I saw a banner of this image, and I didn't know what it was from. I thought a fan had made it. I thought a fan had drew it. I saw it was of Shinji crouched beside her with this skin-tight glossy suit on that looks nothing like her suits look the entire movie, with all this stuff ripped off around her boobs and her hip and everything. And I saw that banner at a booth, and I thought it was fan art. I thought that's what it was. And I just walked by it being like, ew. And then when I watched this in the movie, I was like, So yeah. I guess it was a spoiler. I just didn't realize it until I saw the movie. But that's literally all this image is. This image is to be put on a body pillow for someone. That is all this is for. It did not have to be that way. Didn't have to have it. That's fine. And she's like, give my regards to Kensuke. Meaning that they gonna be together. And then take care of yourself, princess. And then she's back there like she was. Without the plug suit, so whatevs. And then Kaoru's like, well, she's gone to go off with her beau. Won't you be lonely, Shinji-kun? And he's like, no, I'll be all right. And now it's your turn, Kaoru. And I love that we go back to how they met on episode 24 and 25. Episode 24. He's like, I've come here and met you before so many times. And he's like, our names are written in the book of life. We'll meet over and over again. I am you. I'm just like you. That's why I was attracted to you. I wanted to bring you happiness. He's like, you're a lot like my dad. And he's like, well, yeah. That's why you piloted the same Eva. It's like, look at you, Shinji. You've all grown up. And Shinji says he's not going to cry anymore because it doesn't solve any problems. And he's like, I think I have to dispose of Unit 13 and your Eva. He's like, I need to cast aside the Evas in order to live my life. He's like, I was mistaken about your happiness. And then I love that Kaji and Kaoru end up together in this. It's kind of great. He's like, that was your happiness, Commander Nagisa. It wasn't Shinji-kun's happiness that you wanted. You wanted his happiness to bring you your own. So yeah, he kept waking up over and over again. And so then I like that he sees himself like in Gendo's position with the Gendo suit on and everything. And baby Shinji offers his hand to Kaoru. This is what we do when we want to bond with someone. And Kaoru like has his little tears in his eyes and shakes his hand. You seek a world of complementation. You never change, Shinji-kun. That's why you chose him and wrote his name in the Book of Life. And this is like another alternate world. He's like, thank you, Ryo-chan. You saved me too, you know. It's like another alternate dimension, another alternate story. You can start calling me Kaoru. And what is this Kaoru-Kaji shipping that's happening? We're just going to ship everybody with everybody in this series. Why not? We've made it this far. Why wouldn't we? Why wouldn't we? I do like the concept, though, that he and Shinji, it's kind of a cool concept that, like, they're going to meet over and over again. Like, when they die, their story restarts over and over again, and they'll keep meeting throughout all these different iterations. It's a hopeful thing. It's kind of nice. I like it. And I like in this version, Kaoru's in Gendo's position, like Shinji's father, and Kaji's, like, making the moves on him, because why not? It's like, I'll postpone for now, Commander Nagisa, sir. Ha ha ha. And they talk about how his name means the seashore, between the sea and the shore. And he's set to be like the bookend of the 1st and 13th angel. Your name's very fitting. You've thoroughly fulfilled your duty here. It's fine if he takes over, don't you think? And so then this is really cute. He's like, how about working the fields with me and Katsuragi once you retire? Like, I like this idea of maybe in the afterlife, there's Kaji and Masato and Kaoru just all hanging out together, making watermelons. I like that. It's really sweet. And then they can watch over Shinji hanging out with their kid. But yeah, and this part here, you see the exit sign. You see the exit sign on the side of the garage, which is kind of cool. And it's like, there's the exit. And it's like Shinji's going back through all of his friends and colleagues and being like, okay, well, how do we end the story? Kaji and Kaoru walk out together and Rei's left here. And I like that Rei has this like weird baby. She's holding this weird like baby in her arms that she's made with like nails, and like it doesn't look natural. It looks weird. There's no explanation to the baby. The creepy baby is given no explanation. Shinji bats no eyes at it. Not even mentioned. She's like, I'm fine right here. But they're on a set, right? It's like, it's a tie back to episode 25 and 26 where they're on a set. And it's all deconstructing down. It felt so, this feels Neon Genesis. This feels like it. The mech battles, get out of here. This feels like Neon Genesis Evangelion. You found a home somewhere else. It's like, I think Asuka's going to find a place where she belongs when she gets back too. Yeah, she's with Ida! Okay, dude. Here for it. Happiness without piloting the Evas. That was what I wanted for you. And we see like all like the cameras and everything controlled by the PlayStation controllers. It's great. There's a life out of here you can live too. Which is a tie to, you can get outside of just playing games and being in this otaku culture. It's like another tie. Again, Anno was saying you can leave and go outside and have interactions with other people and live an actual life, right? You don't have to be stuck in that. And again, there's a projector screen showing the images. I'm going to choose a life without the Eva as well. And it shows all of them together. I won't rewind time or revert the world. Because you can't, right? Not in real life. I'm just going to rewrite the world in which one doesn't need the Eva. A new world where people can live. And we see that image of them all together from the original series. I love that. Yep. The birth of a new world. The Neon Genesis. Yep. Roll credits. And Mari-san is coming to get me. So don't worry about me. And then Rei like holds out her hand to shake it with him just like before. And then she leaves. And then it's just Shinji. He's like, I'll give it a try, Ayanami. The Neon Genesis. And then we see him make like that same face as before. And then he decides to like stop the impact. But in the end, Shinji doesn't sacrifice himself. In the end, Gendo Gendo and Yui sacrifice for him. His parents sacrifice everything for him so he can live. I love it. And he's like jettisoned out of before it can kill him. I love that. I love it that he like she takes the fall for him and pushes him away. And she ends up taking the spear, yeah. Mm-hmm. And then at the very he's like he says, right, you were waiting for this moment. You were inside me all this time. Which explains why Gendo saw her earlier in him. Mm-hmm. And then yeah, at the very end, Yui and Gendo together. And they let him go. Father wanted to see you off, right? Mm-hmm. And so yeah, it's great. Gendo ends up getting his wish. Gendo gets his wish and ends up being with Yui at the very end. And they look so happy together. I'm like, everybody gets a happy ending. That's just how it ends. They slayed God together. Okay. And then everything ends and it all crushes apart and the goodbye Evangelions. It's like, that's the end of things. And then all the people fall back to Earth, like the animals and everything. And then the satellite and all that is restored and everybody's walking on the shore. And then Shinji's alone on the beach, but it's like a complete beach again. And I like how it deconstructs for a moment and it becomes the cell animation, like it's restarting, like it's starting back up again. It's getting rewritten. And then Mari's Evangelion comes in. And then she shows up like, just in the nick of time I made it. He's like, Mari-san. And of course she falls in the water and then everything like rewrites, right? But then the Evangelion disappears. Like it just kind of just evaporates because why not? I do think that it's just like she had to do like the Little Mermaid thing with the hair flip because why not? And then she says, I'm sorry I'm late, Shinji-kun. And then we're back at the train station at track 3. And the cool thing is it's track 3 because Neon Genesis and the number 3. And so they're all standing there and Shinji's waiting. Shinji's like at the train station waiting for her to get there. But the train on the other end is where everybody else is at, right? And we see the train coming to pick them up. And he looks over to see who's there. And you can see everybody, right? You can see that there's a woman there that could be Masato. There's Kaoru and Rei hanging out. Rei's in actually different clothes. There's a girl over on the other side standing next to Asuka, who's in like a jacket and everything. And Shinji looks over and Kaoru's got a sweet blazer on with the watch and looks like Rei. I don't know if there was supposed to be a connection between I don't know if Kaoru and Rei are supposed to be like the reincarnations of Gendo and Yui in this because they seem like they're together. However that works. And then the train blocks it. And then Mari shows up. I do like seeing older Shinji though. It's cool to see him older. And he says, a gorgeous girl with a big chest. And she's like, bingo. So maybe since Mari is different in this world, maybe this is the rewritten world without the Evangelions, and Mari isn't the same age as his parents. Maybe this is different. She still smells him, and she takes the choker off. I don't understand why he still had the choker on after all these years, or unless he reimagined the world and then that was it. I don't know why he still had it on to begin with, and she takes it off. And then he tries to pull a thing saying, oh, you're as cute as ever. And puts the glasses back on. She's like, oh, you got a mouth on you. Like, that's the most flirty we've ever seen Shinji. And then she takes it off and puts it in her pocket. And says, come on, Shinji-kun, let's go. And he grabs her hand and runs off with her. And says, yeah, let's go. And then that's it. And then they run off, and then it transitions into the real world, which is kind of cool. And then that's the end of the movie. And I've talked for 4 hours. Oh my god. absolutely loved this movie. This movie was great. This is my favorite of the rebuilds by far. I'm probably going to go back and watch several parts of this movie because I really liked it. I liked the Kaoru and Shinji stuff in the third film, but this one, if it was going to stand on its own and be like a conclusion to Evangelion, I feel like this was a proper conclusion to the series. I feel like it was a proper goodbye, and then they get out and run off and do their own thing. I kind of like that. I don't ship Mari and Shinji together. If you ship them, fine. I don't hate the ship. I'm just kind of befuddled about it. But Asuka and Ida, bring on all the fan fiction, y'all. I'm ready. Because I'm like, yes, I'm all for this. Can do. My new ship. And then I don't ship Rei and Kaoru. It's too weird. But I like the fact that Rei and Kaoru are in this world with Shinji. There's a chance he can interact with them. It leaves off at just a nice note of ambiguity, but Shinji's growing up. He's an adult. I like it. I like that it kind of just leaves it open to us as Neon Genesis would. And Gendo got to be with Yui in the end. Look at that. Like, this was definitely like the happy ending of Evangelion. And so I get if you are an End of Evangelion and OG series fan, I can get all the reasons you wouldn't like this movie. I definitely can. I could see, because it does the polar opposite of End of Evangelion. End of Evangelion and this movie end on vastly different terms and different tonal shifts. But honestly, for this being the end of the rebuild movies and the end of the series, I'm okay with it. I like it. It's my favorite of the rebuilds. I'm totally on board with it. There's so much that I was like, yep, totally fine with. And maybe Ryoji Kaji will show up and him and Shinji will have a thing. Who knows? Get out of here, Mari. But yeah, I really enjoyed this. I've talked enough about it. I've talked way too long about it. We'll still have the recap to talk about it in comparison to everything else. But yeah. So I'm very curious, after all this, to know your thoughts down below. I guess the only thing that I don't want spoiled now is the manga. I do want to read the manga, so I don't want manga spoilers. But now we can talk about the rebuilds in full, which is exciting. So that's a fun time. But yeah, I'm curious to know your thoughts down below. I hope you all have a wonderful week. Please stay safe, take care, and yeah, I will be back next week and we will start our journey finishing off Neon Genesis Evangelion with the manga. And I'll see you then. Bye.